Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар. Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 520 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again on another very big news day.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 48 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. And I've got to say that there have been some massive changes in the past 48 hours, and we have seen the first of its kind of any video that has ever been seen on the war in Ukraine so far. Really quickly, before we get into the news, I'd also like to make a quick announcement that we will not be doing a rollback like we were last night, where we are cutting out a few days in the streaming schedule to try and prepare for law school. We are going to just be running our normal streaming schedules until law school starts. Because I didn't really know what to do last night, because I just sat around and did nothing, and I was thinking, why in the world are we doing this? So we are going to be running our normal schedules up until law school starts. So I hope that makes some of y'all very happy, because we'll be on air a lot more in these next few weeks. We'll be running our normal schedules. But moving on into that game...
And also, real quick, I noticed that Lewis said, Matt sounds like he's back to 100%. I am finally back to normal, believe it or not, for now, knock on wood. Hopefully it stays that way, but for now, I am in the clear of the plague, so I'm super thankful. Didn't have to go to the doctor either.
And of course, that is also very good news to hear, and Matthew is finally on the up. He's not on the up and up, he's at the up, he's at the top, so he's well off again, and hopefully he'll stay that way for a very long time. And so, we're now going to be moving on into this game-changing clip, and this is going to be taking us into something that is truly war-changing, really news-changing as a matter of fact. Many of y'all may know of the line. The line that the Russians have built that composes of 3 separate defensive lines that span 70 miles from east to west across the southern front. Where that line exists is just about a mile or two behind Robotny, and it extends an entire 70 miles. Part of that line is right here, right outside of the village of Verbove. Kind of verbose sounding. It rhymes with verbose a little bit, verbove. But nonetheless, this is where part of that massive 70-mile-long defensive line is. It is comparable in historical terms to the Siegfried Line, the Maginot Line, or the Hindenburg Line of the First World War. And something that we've seen today, and I'm hyping this up because this is a video that deserves a lot of hype, is something that we'll never see in this war again. The units in this area, mostly comprised of the 47th Brigade, have conducted a breakthrough in this area, and have been able to push the Russian forces back, and in fact, from what we understand, break the Russian forces just east of the town of Robotny, and some of their first units have reached the very beginning of the defensive line in the south. This is historic footage. It is the only footage right now of its kind that exists anywhere on the internet, anywhere in the world, as a matter of fact. And it is being shown for one of the first times, well actually it's been shown a lot in the past few hours, but it is being shown for the first time on this channel as we see the Ukrainians finally reaching that line. And so as this video loads, how are y'all all doing tonight? Y'all doing good? Well, let's watch history unfold. So here's the clip. Here we can see that first defensive line of Dragon's Teeth of, what in the world will we call this line, rather than just calling it the line? The Shoigu line. I think that would be an appropriate name for it. And there is the first Ukrainian tank reaching the Shoigu line. That tank right there...
I think they're actually officially called the Surovikin line, like in reality, like for real.
Yeah, it is the Surovikin line, now that I remember. Because I was like, what the hell is the name? People have given this thing a name before. But we can see the Ukrainian tank advancing onto the Surovikin line, and it is the first tank in the history of this war to do such a thing. We can see that it vaulted its way right over the first anti-tank ditch, it appears. Or did it? I can't really tell because it's no longer advancing at this point. And we're not seeing the tank advancing anymore, but we can see some additional Ukrainian infantry back there in the background, moving around the tree line right in front of the Surovikin line. And to be honest with y'all, I think that tank just ended up going headfirst into the anti-tank ditch and is now stuck. But nevertheless, while it may have gone headlong right into the anti-tank ditch, this is the first armored vehicle and the first Ukrainian unit that has ever made it to the Surovikin line. And this is truly game-changing and war-changing as far as it goes for the Russians. The effectiveness of these defensive lines, regardless of what people always want to point out historically, are actually fairly weak. And I'll give you all some historical examples of defensive lines like these that ended up being completely unusable or historically uneventful. First is the Hindenburg Line in the First World War. It was made 10 miles behind the German lines around mid-1917. By the year 1918, American Expeditionary Forces blew clean through the Hindenburg Line, and in fact had gone through it with such ease, most American units thought they hadn't even reached the Hindenburg Line and had reported that they had only met light resistance and had still not reached the Hindenburg Line yet. They actually had gone clean through and were about 5 miles ahead of their objectives. In the Second World War, both France and Germany would end up constructing in the pre-war years 2 defensive lines of their own. The German line would be called the Hindenburg Line, and would span an area around the region of Saarbrücken and all the way down to the area of Basel along the Swiss border. That defensive position would prove to be unusable in 1939 and 1940, considering that the Germans conducted the Blitzkrieg against France through the Argonne and ended up taking them completely by surprise, so it wasn't used. And then when it was finally used in 1944, it ended up proving to be a little bit of a difficult challenge, but still was overcome by US, British, and French forces as they easily made their way through this the Siegfried Line. Well, sorry, not the Siegfried Line, the Hindenburg Line. No, I'm sorry, I got that wrong. It is the Siegfried Line. It's not the Hindenburg Line. That's the First World War defensive position. They made
I was about to say, where'd the Hindenburg come from?
Yeah, they made it through the Siegfried Line, and they made it on into the Ruhr Valley area without any problems. The Maginot Line, which is the one that many of y'all know about because it's the one that's joked about so much, was a defensive line made by the French in exactly the same place that the Germans had built the Siegfried Line. It ended up being completely unusable, as the Germans, of course, just bypassed it through Luxembourg and Belgium, and ended up surprising French forces that were completely unprepared along the French border, once again proving to be completely unusable and completely worthless as a defensive position. And we're starting to see the same thing that's most likely going to be happening here in the south. This is what the Russian effort at this point relies on, and it is a strategy of losers to field or even build massive defensive structures and massive defensive lines such as these. It shows that they no longer have any offensive ambitions, and they're only planning on holding on to what they can. And by the time they're being pushed back to this position, the brigades that are supposed to be taking up defensive positions in this line have been so thoroughly worn out before they even got here that they're not going to prove to be an effective defense, paired with the defensive line. So we're going to probably see that the Ukrainians will make it through, and if any logic is to be applied here, we'll also see that the Ukrainians try to capitalize on the situation and conduct a breakthrough in this area before Russian defenses can be properly set up here, if at all. But moving on from that amazing and breaking news, which is something that truly can't compare to any other kind of news that we've gotten from the Southern Front so far, there has been a lot of news that has been happening along the Southern Front over today alone. We didn't even get to include yesterday's news into this past 48 hours on the Southern Front, because the past 48 hours alone have been more eventful than the past 48 hours altogether. So we just omitted the yesterday's news and just went with today's news entirely in this area. But moving on into the area of Novoandreevka, we got a video that was very interesting where the Ukrainian army, United 24 specifically, went into great detail about how they've been using the checkmate vampires in the area to try and destroy as many Russian forces as possible, and also the great effects that the vampire MLRS has had on the frontline position. If y'all can't tell, I've had a little bit too much coffee, but here's the clip. And there it is. It's the
55th
vampire.
Artillery Brigade is the oldest artillery brigade in the armed forces of Ukraine. Since August last year, they switched exclusively to the 155th caliber and working only with the Western provided equipment. And this is the MLRS Vampire, which is the checkmate artillery system. And it is a younger, but bigger and definitely more talented brother of the BM-21 Grad.
RM-70 Vampire, just like the BM-21 Grad, is a multiple launch rocket system, but mounted on a bigger and much heavier truck with an armored cabin. Due to its weight, it fires more precisely. Also, it has 4 pairs of wheels, which makes the machine of a great size quite maneuverable.
This armored cabin is very forgiving. It was a case when a shell hit very close to us. and the armor withstood it, and so did the windshield.
Man, that Chad Tatra just tanking shots, you know, just, man, that thing, like, if you got Tatra on the front of a vehicle, you know that thing's going to run until the wheels come off.
Finally, the MLRS is not meant for precision strikes. It is intended to cover a quadrant of about 10,000 square meters. But in the skillful hands of Ukrainian artillerymen, the Vampire virtually becomes a high-precision weapon.
Due to its accuracy, it makes no sense to use a full package of rockets. We shoot 10 to 15 rockets at a target, for which a Grad would use 40.
This exact machine was produced in 2022 and was actually assembled at the same time Ukrainian soldiers were undergoing training in the Czech Republic. Even though the era of low-precision MLRS is coming to an end, this gun is still respected by the artillerymen.
Of all the guns you've worked on, which is your favorite?
Well, this one is probably my favorite. It's a force of nature. Every time I watch it fire, I feel a kind of elation, and if it turns out that we hit the target well, it's just wow.
Man, this guy looks at this Vampire the way that Surovikin looks at that defensive line. That's something.
Yes.
That's admiration right there.
So today is a super sunny day and sky seems like spotless clear. However, it is not, because there are several enemy UAVs and now we have to wait in our discreet place prior to working.
Finally, the crew takes off to a fire position. Every second is crucial, and there is no room for error, as Russians have systems like the Zoo Park that can intercept rockets. The commander and then the gunner receive coordinates and find the perfect spot for the gun. While the crew sets up the Vampire, the gunner makes all the necessary calculations.
We now see them setting up the Vampire to fire.
Основной 30. Побежали.
You now see them firing it.
Damn, son, where'd you find that?
Damn, son! Just broke my eardrums.
And then leave even faster.
And yes, the chat did break for a second. I have no idea what's going on with that.
Yeah, I was looking over there and I was starting to sweat bullets. I was like, did everyone just stop talking or did our stream disconnect? Which was it?
Winter, we didn't leave on time, and I ended up hospitalized along with our driver. An S-300 missile flew right under the tire of our pickup. I had 4 broken ribs, 2 of them dislocated, and a contusion. The driver had an open femur fracture. He's still in the hospital.
But with that, that's the end of the clip from United 24 talking about the Vampire MLRSs, and absolutely incredible to see them using Western tech like that Czech-provided Tatra-based MLRS that is incredibly accurate in setting the standard for MLRS accuracy outside of the HIMARS in the Southern Front. But before we move on into the local clips that are kind of around the area of Roboltne and Wheelipol, we have to take you really quickly to the area of Staromaiorske. It was reported on this channel on Sunday that a Russian garrison in this area had surrendered and the city was now under Ukrainian control, but any corroborating footage and real evidence to show that Staromaiorske had been taken had not come out at that point yet. And over the past 48 hours, and largely over just today, all of the footage has come out showing the actual liberation of the entire settlement of Staromaiorske. Ukrainian forces are currently south of Staromaiorske and fighting in the area of Zavitne Brezhanya. Once they fight through the small village of Zavitne Brezhanya, they will be in the area of Staromaiorske, which is the final village in this village chain, starting all the way in the area of Velika Novosilka, and this will be past Staromaiorske, the very beginning of the 70-mile-long Surovikin line that has existed here since about last year. But let me really show y'all, well, really quickly show y'all the clip from inside of Staromaiorske, where we saw the Ukrainian flags flying from inside of the city, confirming that it has been liberated. And so, without further ado, here is the clip.
Today
on July 27th, the soldiers of the 35th Separate Brigade of the Navy, together with the 7th Battalion of the ARAI of the Ukrainian Volunteer Army, liberated the village of Staromaiorske. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. And we can see the flags right there, and also let me go back really quickly, and you can see the Ukrainian flag back there. Once again, the Ukrainian flags, the blue and yellow banner, will fly over the city of Staromaiorske. and shows that the Ukrainians are once again picking up momentum in the southern front, not just in the area of Robotny, where there was massive advances day after day, but also along the village chain, which is the other major advance in the southern front. Moving on into the video clips, and also moving on past that massive voice crack that was just had there, we have a whole bunch of videos from the Ukrainians fighting around Staromaiorske and also pushing beyond Staromaiorske. Starting off with our first one, we saw some destroyed Russian forces that had been left behind in the town after the Ukrainians were able to capture it. Here's the clip. If it loads. I don't know what's up tonight. It seems that things are kind of slow loading, but we'll go with it nonetheless. And so, let me really quickly, we'll go through this video slowly and we'll explain everything that was destroyed and then proven to be destroyed around the town of Staromaiorske. Starting off with these first vehicles, it appears that there was some kind of a command BMD that was destroyed. We can tell it's a command BMD due to its lack of a turret and also its special configuration of the hull where the turret would be. We can also see what appears to be a damaged BTR-80 that burned out far earlier in the battle. In the next picture, we can see a destroyed, what may be a T-72BV or a T-80BV. We can also see a destroyed BMP-1 right there, along with a destroyed civilian vehicle requisitioned most likely by the Russian army. We can also see a destroyed Scooby-Doo van a little bit further down the street, like Zoink Scoob, the Russian army's in full retreat. Raggy, surrender. But anyways, moving on from that. We can also see another destroyed Russian main battle tank. This one, once again, appears to be some kind of a T-72B. We can also see another destroyed Russian main battle tank, and another one down there as well. This one had a turret toss. Sadly, we didn't get to see it. And we can also see another completely detached turret over here. This one has its turret on top of the tank. It was dislocated a little bit, but we don't know what tank that turret belonged to. Maybe that one right there, but that one appears to have been destroyed so completely there's really nothing left of the tank. We can also see another destroyed T-72B3. We can kind of tell that by the armor tile layout. We can also see another destroyed Scooby-Doo van, it appears. A burning out Russian tank that drones are just flying over. I think it may be bombing the tank in the process of this video. And it looks like it just went nuclear. Oh. And we can see that one going nuclear right there. And the smoke cloud rising above the fields. Very nice. And now we can see a damaged Russian mine layer. These are actually very rare. They're not quite expensive, or at least the trucks they're based on. They are Euro 4320s. You know, those are a dime a dozen kind of ordeal. But the mine laying system in the back of this truck is somewhat rare, actually. From what we understand, there's only a few dozen of these things in the entirety of the Russian army, which is fairly small, and we can see that one of them was destroyed here, and it appears that it wasn't even able to discharge its mines before it was destroyed. We saw this a while ago, actually. We can also see a destroyed MTLB, another destroyed MTLB, a Lada Niva that appears to have been Niva'd in the field. We can also see, ooh, now that's actually kind of rare. It looks like a BMD-3 that was destroyed. That means that that most likely was a part of the VDV, because these are lighter variants of your BMP APCs, or at least that's the role that they're supposed to fill, and they're usually used by units that require lighter vehicles, like airborne units, for example, the VDV. Now, that would have been a BMP, but we can't even tell what kind, because every single identifying part of it has vaporized at that point. So we can also, well, that one's clearly a BMP-2 that was destroyed. It appears that the engine bay was most likely the part that was actually spared due to the paint being intact in that area. It appears that whatever burned out this vehicle, it started near the infantry compartment. We can also see another destroyed BMP-2, what the hell, a Typhoon armored truck. We haven't seen those much in the war. Those are actually very rare, at least in usage on the front, and it appears that they were able to get one. We never saw that on film. But with that, that's the end of the clip, and showing an assortment of the destroyed vehicles around Staromaiorske that the Russians have lost over the course of the entire Ukrainian offensive. Moving on from that, we also saw some continued fighting to the south of Staromaiorske from today. This was from the 35th Marine Brigade. We hear gunfire, and we can see the cameraman directing a machine gunner into a village house. You now see him aiming down the street and covering as the machine gunner and the rest of his squad makes it into the small village house. We now see the cameraman moving across. And we now hear some fighting going on in the small village house compound. We now see him moving in through the doorway and moving on into the destroyed house. And now firing into the distance where the Russian forces are, further south. We now see that the footage is cut and they're now advancing through some more destroyed buildings. And we now see them clearing out some basements. We now see them clearing some more buildings here. And now hanging out inside of a basement with an RPG-7. You now see him getting out of the basement. And running towards the open where he can get a good shot with the RPG. He's now firing it. And now he's running back. Hurom Slava! And with that, that's the end of that clip, but showing us what the 35th Marine Brigade has been doing in the area today after they liberated the town of Staromaiorske. Of course, all work and no play means that you never win a war, and so they are constantly working even after liberating the village of Staromaiorske and are continuing to push on further south and towards the area of Zvitny Bajanya. Moving on from that clip and into our next one, we also saw a little bit more footage of the liberated village of Staromaiorske. This footage was taken from the 7th Battalion, which has also been there with the 35th liberating the village of Staromaiorske. Due to the content and language that this Ukrainian soldier uses throughout this clip, unfortunately I won't even really be able to read the translation at all, because it is this the entire time, and of course that is something that is deeply frowned upon by YouTube.
Ну та, блядь, пидоры везде летают. Вот такая хуйня, моя.
We see that the village of Staromaiorske is still covered with morning fog and the most likely fog of gunfire as well.
Русский мир ебаный, блядь. Заебись, блядь. Це для цих хотюнчиків руського мира. Їм же ж нравиться, блядь. Дебілоїди єбані, блядь. Оце все ваші, блядь. Красіє, блядь. Щоб ви, сука, подавилися цією Росією. Ну, та це все, що розхуярено, це так похуй, блядь. А от скільки жизни загублено, от це не похуй.
See him walking on through the village, and you can see a large puddle right there.
Блядь, повен трофеїв. Підарів наколпашив, блядь. Нагріб собі всього на світі. І йде додому.
Now, Matthew, whenever I hear a good joke, this is what I do.
Damn.
Matthew,
that laugh was hardcore.
When he makes it to Vrvove and he sees the Russian Surovikin line.
І йде додому.
Man, he sounds like Conor McGregor when he laughs.
Vitalia! You know what that means?
Така хуйня. Розпіздячено все. А тут був асфальт. Ось тобі один улибаючийся. З ПБС.
That was, by the way, that was just some infantry kit and a backpack. But we wanted to move on just to make sure we played it safe. And so with that, that's the end of that clip, but great to see that they were able to liberate the village of Staromaiorske, and we can see that there are no Russian forces there. We could see some pretty good proof of that. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from that clip and into the next one where we saw some Ukrainian artillery firing onto the Russians. And for some reason, they are using the Game of Thrones mobile app music. I don't know why, but we're going to be muting that because I know that that's copyrighted. I have a fairly good feeling that if it's being used on a mobile ad, I'm fairly certain that that's probably copyrighted by the people who play that mobile ad. So we're not going to be playing the music for copyright reasons. But here's the clip of the Ukrainian artillery, once again lathering up the Russians like, let me think of who would lather up something. Mark Zuckerberg lathers up ribs with Sweet Baby Ray's, and we can see that they're lathering it on quite good and heavy, just like Mark Zuckerberg's sun cream. I don't know why in the world Mark Zuckerberg lathers everything heavily, but that's what he does. We can see the artillery landing into the village streets and effectively hitting some of the houses where the Russians are in, and probably wiping them out fairly well. But you now see the destroyed village buildings that the Russians were hiding inside of. And I have a feeling that hiding inside of those from here forward will be rather difficult. We can now see them shelling another part of the southern part of Staromaiorske right there. And we can also see the shells continuing to land around the compound that the Ukrainians have been bombarding the entire time. And it appears they're doing a very effective job at the accuracy side of things. Also, another thing right there, that wide shot was so good. Look at that. It shows us a specific part of the river, and we can probably find that part of the river on this map. And so, let's go over here to Velika Novosilka. There we go. And let's see. Here it is. Look at that. There's the Mokry Yali River. And there's the actual part we just saw in that clip. So some of y'all may be wondering, because of that, and where the drone is flying, and where the camera is looking, relative to the drone's position and the direction that the camera is looking in, where in the world are those artillery shells falling? And that's an amazing question. As we look south, we can see here that this little bend right there is the one that is right there on the clip. And so if we look over there, that is clearly the village of Staromaiorske, and it appears that their shells are hitting right down here, near this area. And so that appears to be where the artillery is hitting the Russians. And you know, when you see that drone footage, you realize that is a very rural area.
It is. It's rural. It's kind of like Alabama almost.
Now, I wouldn't put it down on that level, Matthew, but it is kind of rural. So that has to
Well, I mean.
Man, it ain't as rural as Alabama, and we got trees. But anyways, moving on from that clip, those are all the clips that we got from Staromaiorske today. But amazing to see that the Ukrainians have been fighting in this area, liberating it, and also showing the proof in the videos that they are actually raising the flags over the village. It is a massive success to take any of the villages along the village chain, as this is one of the major axes of advance that the Ukrainians have been conducting ever since the beginning of the counteroffensive on June 6th of 2023. And so absolutely incredible to see. And we're going to be moving on to a few of our other clips inside this on the front. One was just south of Wheelapole, where we saw the Ukrainians taking out an SPG. And we're going to be muting that because it's using some kind of rave music. But we can see the drone lining itself up.
And they love that Chad music. They're huge fans of Chad music.
Man, everybody is a fan of Chad music. Everyone wants to be Little Chadlington. And now we can see the drone flying on into the 2S1 and getting a solid hit. And cue the Chad music.
Oh yeah, that goes hard in the headphones.
Man, that thing bops. Let me think. I don't have a joke for that one. Anyways,
I was about to say it could go sideways.
Yeah, that could go sideways badly. But anyways, that's the end of that clip right there, and great to see that their kamikaze drone was able to take out another SPG. Moving on into the area of Novopetrovka, we also saw a Ukrainian medic spending his free time playing the flute, and it sounds like he be bopping. We're going to play the audio because I know that this guy couldn't have gotten to a records album and had this thing copyrighted yet. So we're gonna play it. I know this will be copyrighted in like 5 months, and then they'll come back and get our video for some reason, but here's the clip. Just the casual sounds of small firefights in the background.
With the casual middle finger symbol in the bottom left.
Yeah. Everything about this video is just so unique. The music, the atmosphere, it's flawless.
Is that a flute or a clarinet?
It's a flute. Now, Matthew, that's when you're about to get flamed for right there. People are about to start flaming you on that one. Man, he's doing it one-handed. Look at that. I just love the sounds of the firefights going on in the background as this guy is just playing the flute.
Now, what if he did that flute and the Russians started running in like rats?
He's the Pied Piper.
Yeah.
Dude, Putin is in the middle of threatening all of the African countries of not getting grain in St. Petersburg, and this guy starts playing the flute, and Putin's nose turns into like a rat nose, and he sniffs, and he goes, hold on, there's something going on. And then he just runs off the stage, starts running towards the flute, like it's hundreds of miles away. But anyways, that's the end of that clip, and I gotta say, this man do be schmoovin', and it appears that a lot of people on the front lines were appreciating the absolutely melodic tones coming out of that flute. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from that low clip in the Southern Front, and we're now going to be moving on into the international news for the most part, because we have to cover some of the things that have been going on around the world. And really, it's just inside of Russia. It's the town of Taganrog. And what happened? Big things. Actually, it's the first confirmed instance of the Ukrainians firing missiles into a Russian city and attacking Russian strategic targets that are not military targets. We'll be getting to that here in just a second, because that is really something. It's actually a historical event, really. But before we get into any of that, and before we start covering the news in Taganrog, the live chat has been going insane. Right now, there are 100 chats coming in per minute. That is about one every 0.7 to 0.66 seconds. More than a chat a second. And I want to make sure that we talk about what y'all have been talking about. A lot of y'all have been saying a whole bunch of cool stuff in the live chat. And Matthew's, of course, been paying attention and throwing up some polls, as many of y'all have been putting out some of the top questions of the night, and we're trying to see what y'all all think of some of the pressing questions of the day. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, let's jump right into our first segment of polls and questions. And our very first poll says, Ukraine broke through main Russian lines today in the south, and is Ukraine's momentum going to increase? 66% said yes, it will increase. 21% said it's too early to know. 7% said it will remain consistent, and 6% said unsure. And on this one, I have a very strong feeling that after this one major breakthrough they've had there near Robotny, or however you pronounce it, I know I'm not saying it properly, but I'm going to go with it, or it's going to mess me up. Yes, I'm just going to say Robotny, so you just have to tolerate the Alabama pronunciation tonight. But I think momentum will increase. We'll probably see several more breakthroughs happen along the same area. One thing to keep in mind, though, is those defenses by the Russians are very strong. They are very entrenched. And even though the Russians are incompetent for the part, even the Russians being incompetent with those deep entrenchments, it's going to be very tough to actually break through those lines. So it's very fierce fighting going on right now. And I do expect some more breakthroughs to happen. But Enforcer, what say you?
I think we're probably going to see the momentum pick up greatly. And I think that we may be surprised to find out that the defensive lines in the south are going to prove to be completely useless as far as the Russians have been hoping. Sure, it's a big defensive line, and they do have pre-prepared defenses, but the thing about modern war is that there's an extra level of information that we can even see right now that other armies in the past never got to see, and they still overcame these defensive positions fairly well. Let's go back to World War II real quick, and let's talk about some of the historical examples we can see there, which is the Maginot Line and also the Siegfried Line. So they were both in the same area, and both of them would be used to really no avail at different points of the war. The Maginot in 1939 to 1940, and the Siegfried Line would be used around 1944. Both of them ended up failing. And back then, to be able to find out what these defensive lines looked like, one had to get inside of a special purpose airplane that was completely unarmed. It was built entirely for speed. They mounted a camera into the tail section of the plane, and you would have to fly at extremely low altitudes over any part of that line you wanted to see, snap a picture, hope that plane got back, develop the photograph, and there you have it. You have about several hundred square meters of the line, and you had to repeat that over and over and over to actually get an idea of what that defensive line looked like at all. And even then, some of the pictures could come back grainy, some of them could just be terrible in quality, and then you have absolutely no idea what that defensive line looks like. And so the Allied forces, largely the US forces and the British forces, that would end up coming into contact with that Siegfried line, ended up having no real idea of what they were going up against. And we saw that didn't really even prove to be much of a problem for them. They figured it out fairly quickly, figured out how to overcome the pre-prepared defenses, and then just went right through them for the most part. And so that's something to keep in mind right there, is the lack of information that they had, yet they overcame that defensive line incredibly well. And the Germans, I would say, were in a fairly similar situation in 1944 that we're seeing the Russians in 2023. Because let's put out the historical context behind the German failure at the Siegfried line into modern terms and compare what the Russians are doing to what the Germans did. The Germans at that point in the war were fairly worn out, and that's to say the least. They had been fighting all the way through France, all the way from the beaches of Normandy, and kind of going in a trapdoor where its pivot is around the area of Brussels, all the way back to the French border. And by that time, their units had been worn out. Of course, the any advances or any movements in Ukraine aren't that large, but the Russian forces have been fighting in the south against the Ukrainian offensive for nearly 2 months at this point, and they have started to get worn out, and a lot of people are seeing that they just don't have the ability. Also, are we lagging?
No.
Because there's a lot of LSAs coming in the chat, and I was like, are we lagging? Because there's a lot of people saying that. But anyways, moving on from that, they had to swing back around, and by that point, their units were worn out. The Russian forces have been fighting for nearly 2 months. They are worn out. There is no strategic reserve, so they are continuing to become fatigued as time goes by, and now they're being pushed on that defensive line in a situation that is going to be a lot less advantageous than it was when those units had some kind of cohesion, some kind of supplies, and they hadn't been worn out yet. And so in those two instances, in that one instance, the German situation on the Siegfried line in 1944 is very comparable to the Russian situation here in 2023 when they're reaching the Surovikin line. Another thing that is fairly comparable actually is completely uncomparable in between the two, and would give the Ukrainians a massive advantage, is that modern information technology and satellite photography has given the Ukrainians a perfect look at exactly what that defensive line looks like and what they'll be going up against in any given area. The American and British forces that would end up pushing onto that Siegfried line, like I said earlier, had absolutely no idea what they were going to be going up against for the most part. The Ukrainians, on the other hand, reaching the area of Verbove, know exactly what the defensive lines already look like in that area, and will be able to prepare accordingly to bring in the proper equipment and to emphasize the proper strategy to deal with all of those defensive positions as best as they can. And I think that's going to prove to be the massive change here in between the Germans in 1944 on the Siegfried line and the Russians in 2023, is that the Americans and the British were able to overcome it without a massive amount of knowledge on what that defensive line looked like, and they were also going up against German forces that were comparable in their abilities to what the Russians are comparable to right now in the modern day. And so I think they'll actually end up picking up momentum and push through those lines. Much like any other area in the South, it'll be a little slow, a lot slower than people think it would have been, compared to what we were expecting at the beginning of this counteroffensive, but they will make it through, probably with the same amount of resistance that they've been facing the entire time. And so I hope I addressed that poll fairly well and also compared it to a historical example. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, moving on to our next poll. It says Russia says it is willing to talk with Ukraine to end the war, and would you entertain peace talks? It looks like 39% said no, never make peace with Russia. 32% said yes, at least entertain the talks. 25% said maybe later, but not now, and 5% said unsure. And on this one, I'm sure I'm going to get some flack for this, but I'm going to be in the 32%. I think that Ukraine should at least entertain the talks. And I know everyone's going to say that Russia has done some atrocious things in Ukraine, and I would absolutely agree with that 100%. However, at the same time, we're not sure exactly what Russia's terms are at this point, and they might be willing to completely withdraw from the territory. I know that's somewhat wishful thinking, but we don't know until we sit down and talk. And it never hurts to do that, and it's not showing weakness by trying that, in my opinion. It can hurt, though, if they don't sit down at the table and the war keeps going on and drags out for years and years and years and doesn't stop. And it could have been stopped potentially right now if they would have sat down and spoken to each other. So I'm with the 32%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say I don't think it was a good. I don't think it would have been a good idea for them to try and go to the negotiating table, because we know what the Russians probably would have said. They probably would have said, "You need to lay down your arms before the negotiations continue any further," and then it would have just been pointless, anyways. The Russians need to indicate, for real talks to happen at this point, in my opinion, that they are willing to give up territories for the Ukrainians to go to the negotiating table. If they're not willing to make that guarantee going into the negotiations, I think it's largely pointless to go into negotiations at all. And of course, it doesn't hurt to go into diplomatic negotiations. It's not like, just because you go into them, you have to give up everything and you lose the war and it's unconditional and, everyone dies or anything. But at the same time, it just seems pointless, because the Russians have always had the same negotiating position every single time throughout the war. The Ukrainians have to lay down their arms to even get to the negotiating table, and this would probably end up the same way. They would say, "Okay, let's talk," and then the Russians will go, "Well, you have to lay down your arms first," and then it would have been completely pointless.
Now, I will say, if they added a stipulation like you have to lay down your arms or you have to give up or something like that, no, obviously that would not be a good thing. But if they just want to sit down and talk, for one thing, it has one benefit by telling the Western allies to Ukraine that Ukraine is still being level-headed and they're not letting the whole situation get to their heads, and that would serve them well in the West's perspective. Also, it would give Ukraine an advantage to sit down and figure out exactly what the Russians' mindset is right now. And that is helpful, because the negotiators, do give away some information that might be helpful to the Ukrainians to figure out exactly what the Russians' end game actually is. Because, the Russians are incompetent and their negotiators might be incompetent as well. So to me, it's just a win-win to sit down. Obviously, the odds of something coming out of it positive for Ukraine's favor is not that good, because the Russians are kind of pig-headed still. But you can at least sit down and find out what they're thinking.
Well, that's an interesting idea, but I think we'll have to agree to disagree on that one, because I don't think the Ukrainians really need to negotiate with them until there is some kind of a guarantee that they will give up territory back to Ukraine. But, it is what it is, and that's why we have a poll. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our last poll says, let's see here, flip over to it. Russia is now threatening civilian ships in the Black Sea, and will they succeed in intimidating these vessels? It looks like 34% said yes, they will be successful in doing that. 29% said no, it will not work for Russia. 28% said it depends on external factors, and 10% said unsure. And at this point, I am getting a little bit confused as to what Turkey is actually going to do to help Ukraine get those grain ships through the Black Sea. It's becoming unclear if Turkey is backing out of this. It looks like they might have flaked out, but we're not quite sure just yet. So to me, I would say it depends totally on external factors. We also thought there for a while that maybe NATO might intervene and do something to allow those ships to go through. It also looks like they're not going to do anything either. So it could end up being successful on the Russians' part. They've laid mines, they've threatened to attack vessels, and today we got radio audio of the Russians actually threatening some civilian vessel, and it apparently worked, and the vessel turned away. So, Enforcer, what say you?
I would say it does sound as though that the Turks are backing out. Turkey is doing Turkey things, of course. I don't even know why in the world they would make statements saying that they would provide armed escorts, considering that every single time it came down to them keeping up with their word, they're backing out. So I don't even know why they're doing that, because if you're not going to back up your posturing with action, it's completely pointless, and it's just bluffing, and it's a clear bluff. Beyond that, however, I would say that it does appear that it's becoming a very serious issue, and the Russians are going to start blockading the Ukrainians again. Technically, in wartime, you can do stuff like that, especially when it's inside of the territorial waters of country you're at war with. And I know a lot of people are about to say, but it's not a war. The Russians call it a special military operation. You can call it whatever you want. You could call it pillow fun or something like that. It is a war. And that's how the world is treating this thing, is as a war. That's why you also see that whenever the Russians see the West giving any support that they don't want the West to give, they say, then you will become a party in this war and we'll treat you like that. Because they are also viewing it as a war. You can, use the magic SMO talk all you want, but it doesn't really stand up once you get into the actual wheeling and dealing of the war itself. So I would say that this is going to probably become a serious issue. I don't really know what the resolution would be, because considering that they are two warring parties, it is technically legal for the Russians to blockade Ukrainian ports if they have the ability to. It becomes the Ukrainians' responsibility to either destroy the Russian Navy or break the blockade through force of arms. So I don't really know what NATO could do, or really anyone could do in response to the Russian blockade, because that's kind of what happens in a war. Unless we want to get directly involved in the war by providing armed escorts and then engaging the Russian Navy in actual battles, that's a whole other thing. But unfortunately, I don't really think there is going to be really any solution to this in the near future. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and with that, we are fresh out of polls, so we're moving into our super chat questions. And up first, we have a very generous $60 donation from none other than Duncan VR. Thank you very much, Duncan, for that support. And he says, "Ba Muba, ba woof oink, celebrate the liberation of the village Staromaiorske." And he spelled it wrong, and I mispronounced it, so we both got something wrong. He said, "Baba, get pizza, meow, oink. Yesterday, meow, I had to go back watching CNN. Oh, man, I'm telling you, I'm sorry. Meow, they don't make animal noises." Well, sometimes they do. Moo, rough, ba. No one does them like enforcing that. Oh, I'm telling you. And I'm the best at animal noises, I'm telling you. Over the many months that you've been putting them in, I've gotten so much better at them. But seriously, though, thank you very much for the support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And thank you so much for the support, Duncan VR. And I have to disagree with you, Duncan VR. CNN does make animal noises. I think we've all heard of the 2 stories where animal noises have been made. They, well, you know, we're not going to go into detail there. But y'all know, right? But anyways, moving on from that, while I'm sitting here trying to hold myself back from laughing about that, thank you so much for the support, and also saying to celebrate the liberation of the village of Starve My Horse. Starve My Horse is part of that village chain, and it is amazing to see that they were finally able to liberate it. They've been working on that for a long time, and we finally just saw it, which is massive news. And I gotta thank you so much for supporting us tonight, and also helping us to be able to get some pizza. We're going to be putting that one towards the pizza fund. And also, I hate to hear that you had to watch CNN again. It's egregious to have to watch any news that's on cable. Mainstream news is what we call it, Fox, CNN, and then some people are going to hear mainstream news and then immediately, you know, get triggered or something, you know. But anyways, don't really like any of them. And I'm glad to know that folks like you, Duncan VR, are happy to be back on this channel, and we are going to make sure to keep this thing rolling. And I thank you so much for the support as well, because it helps us to keep this thing rolling, and it helps us to do this as a job. If it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't have been able to do this for so long, and we wouldn't have been able to keep on doing it. And so thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well, and thank you, Duncan, for being an old guard of the Lee Spring Army. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again for the support.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a $50 super chat from Mr. Diggs. And thank you very much, Mr. Diggs, for being a longtime channel viewer just like Duncan, and also supporting us very generously, and we do appreciate it very much. He says, "United 24 bridges and rivers of Ukraine. There are 23,000 rivers, and those rivers have 28,000 bridges, and how much water is in and around Ukraine is mind-blowing, and the U.S. and Canada and Mexico should rebuild their bridges along the Ukrainian bridges and border."
And thank you so much for the support, Mr. Diggs. And funnily enough, we actually are going to be playing that video today, right after this question segment. We're going to be running that Bridges and Rivers video from United 24. And so really, really good time super chat. And also, it is incredible when you actually get into the sheer volume of water present anywhere in the world. Mostly inside of Europe and the United States. When you actually get into water volume stuff, it is truly insane to understand the overall quantity of water that there is. You know, and of course, whenever you hear things like less than, I think, 1% of the world's water is drinkable, it's pretty weird and kind of alarming to hear that. But then at the same time, if you ever hear the just sheer volume of fresh water in the world, it is actually mind-blowing and just insane to think that that is just 1% of the world's water. But moving back into Ukraine and talking about their situation in particular, it is just really cool that they have so many rivers. And of course, the Dnipro River is one of the largest rivers inside of Europe. The Volga inside of Russia is, of course, the largest, but I believe the Dnipro River is on up there with being about the same length or size as the Ruhr River, which is a very big one. Well, the Rhine River, actually, and it goes through the Ruhr Valley. I got that mixed up there, if y'all can't tell. But still, thank you so much once again for the support, Mr. Diggs. And let's see. And the USA and Canada should rebuild their bridges. Oh, man. Well, you know, that's slightly political, but I think everyone can kind of agree that a large amount of the infrastructure in the United States is constantly being overlooked, and that isn't really to the blame of really any one particular group, because it appears that everyone always tries to make it a marketing point of their election that they're going to fix the roads and bridges, and then the roads and bridges, oh my god, it's the return of an OG.
Hey.
Can you believe that? But also, getting back to the bridge thing before I get completely blown away by that, nobody ever really fixes the roads and bridges, and you can see that very clearly in our hometown of Birmingham. Well, not our hometown, it's the town we live in, of Birmingham, Alabama, where every single interstate in downtown is on an elevated bridge, and a lot of those elevated bridges are beyond their lifespan. You can clearly tell that. They've been trying to fix some of them, but there's just not enough funds to fix them when they need to be fixed. So I could agree with that. If I ever became president, that would be one of the things that I think would be focused on as a priority. Other budgets for other departments would probably end up being cut a little bit by several billion, most likely aimed at the defense sector. Hopefully the time would be right for that sort of thing, otherwise it couldn't happen. So that way it could be diverted towards transportation, and then, you know, of course, the transportation sector could be dealt with a little bit better. But still, thank you so much once again for support, Mr. Diggs. I hope that does address that fairly well, and thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the final question of this segment, and then, and only then, we'll be moving on into the big news in Taganrog and also down to Crimea. Actually, we'll be skipping Taganrog and moving down to Crimea first, since Mr. Diggs was just talking about the video that we were going to be showing down there at the Kerch Strait. And so with that, we are on to the final question.
All right, and the final question of the segment goes to Walter A. Lakota Jr., the return of a channel legend. He puts in a very generous $200 donation, and thank you very much, Walter, for that support. And it's very good to see you again as well. And I just saw a documentary yesterday of your job, and I really did not know what you actually did, but now that I've seen it, I got a lot of respect for what you do, because I had no idea what was involved in being a merchant marine. Very in-depth, to say the least. Definitely above my pay grade. But Walter says, aloha, Enforcer Matt, and LSA from OG Elson Bosun. Yes, and back from doing cargo run from Denmark to Thule, Greenland, and some thoughts about the Black Sea situation is that it's a very gray area, and the counteroffensive is a slow, steady pace for now, and I'm back on shore for a while, and aloha.
And aloha, Walter, and welcome back. It has been a long time since we've had you on air. An absolute legend. The OG Ellison Bosun has returned tonight. And I've got to say, that is incredible. That's amazing. And welcome back. We were wondering where you were, I think, a few weeks ago. We were like, man, where is Walter? And he's back. And also, really cool to hear that you did a cargo run from Denmark to Greenland. I don't know if you're in Greenland right now. If you are, that is crazy, because there's not really a lot of people living in Greenland for that matter. And let me see if I can find, let me just type it in, because I don't think I know where Thule, Greenland is. And where is it? And let me see if it's in that area. Oh, they've renamed it. So that's why I wouldn't be able to find it. And also, let me zoom out while the map, dang, man, that is way up there. You know, of course, the map, the Mercator protection makes everything look way larger the further north you get on both ends, well, further north or further south. But that is very far north. I mean, that is one of the most northerly areas I could think of that's probably even settled. Well, rather than this little village right here that appears to not even really exist. But that is absolutely crazy. And I hope that that was one hell of a trip. That is absolutely insane. And thank you so much for returning. I would also have to agree that the Black Sea is a very gray area. And so it makes what the Russians are doing a little bit more difficult to deal with, because it's not as black and white as people are wanting to make it out to be, because in war, things like this can happen. It would kind of be like condemning the British for sinking any ships that were in the exclusion zone around the Falklands Islands, or the containment zone around the Falklands Islands during the Falklands War. You kind of can't, because it is a war zone, and therefore any ships entering the area are in an active war zone. And you can't really protect ships the same way you can protect civilian areas on shore, like cities or territories for that matter. And so I would have to agree with that entirely, Walter. It is a fairly gray area. But with that, thank you so much once again for the support. The counteroffensive is also at a steady pace as well, and hopefully we'll see that they start to pick up that pace a little bit more, considering that the U.S. said that the counteroffensive is kind of going all in at the moment, and it does appear that that's starting to become the case. But still, That is amazing to have you back, Walter, and I've got to welcome you back tonight. I remember way back in the day, it was months ago, you would be our Hawaiian facts guy. You would always be throwing in really cool and interesting historical facts about Hawaii, and honestly, you taught me more about Hawaii than I've ever learned from anyone else anywhere in the world, which is a lot to say. I haven't really looked at Hawaii much, to be honest, but still, you taught me more about Hawaii than I've ever learned anywhere else. And I got to thank you so much once again, Walter, for being an old guard of this channel, being a part of the Lee Spring Navy, and also joining us tonight, just for maybe tonight alone or the next few days. That is absolutely incredible. And thank you so much once again for returning. And I hope I addressed that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for the mass amount of support, Walter, because support like yours helps this channel to keep on rolling. And if it wasn't for folks like y'all, we wouldn't have been able to do this day in, day out, week after week, month after month, over nearly a year and well, it's over a year and a half at this point. We wouldn't have been able to do it. And I've got to thank every single one of y'all for continuing to support us and help this channel to keep on rolling, because y'all's support makes this thing possible. And Walter, massive support like that really helps with running things behind the scenes. But of course, every support counts, whether it be $1 or $500, which is the maximum amount you can send in on a single given day. But still, thank you so much once again. And I've got to say, welcome back, Walter. That was extremely cool to see, because you're a channel legend. You're a channel legend up there with folks like Mark, and also, let me think of some others. BC Skyman, who is always a channel legend. Duncan, Psyops, all of y'all. It's great to have every single one of the legends around. It's incredible. And so thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. We're now going to be moving out of that question segment and on down into the Kerch Strait to watch the video that Mr. Diggs was talking about in his super chat, which is the Bridges and Rivers video. Or more so just the bridge warfare video, which I think is the Bridges and Rivers video. But here's the clip.
Bridges. They connect two parts of land that are separated by a river, a steep valley, or some other obstacle that makes it hard to get from one side to the other. And in any war, bridges are of exceptional strategic interest, both for the defending and the attacking side. Welcome to Talking Tactics, where this week, as you've probably already figured out, it's about bridges. In the early hours of Monday, the 17th of July, two explosions caused substantial damage to the Kerch Bridge, which connects occupied Crimea with mainland Russia. There were mixed reactions as usual. While Ukraine celebrated,
oh my god, they're using a Napa.
What in the world?
They're using
they
a
put
Napa.
the Napa meme in the U-24 video?
Oh my god, that's actually pretty good, I'm not gonna lie.
a fuming Vladimir Putin vowed revenge for this terrorist act. Why was he so angry? Well, apart from Crimea being of substantial symbolic importance for both sides, the annexation of the peninsula in 2014 and the connection of it to mainland Russia via this $4 billion bridge was one of Putin's greatest self-boasted successes. It's basically his project, showing how he literally reconnected Crimea to Russia. But enough of the Russian talk. In real terms, the bridge is one of Crimea's main lifelines, not only for the military and trade, it also serves as the main pathway for the thousands of Russians who are currently there on holiday. It's also the safest road for those who flee again when the war that they started all of a sudden does get a little bit too close.
Вообще не хочу уезжать из Крыма, как в своем доме жили, настолько все душевно, по-домашнему.
It's not the first time this bridge got hit, like in October 2022. It's probably also not the last. To hit the bridge is a huge success for Ukraine, because although just one day after the explosions, the traffic on the bridge was partially reopened, a lot of transport, especially larger columns, will have to be rerouted through the occupied territories in South and East Ukraine, putting them in range of more Ukrainian weapons and therefore much more at risk. And this brings us to the larger picture. There are around 23,000 rivers and around 28,000 bridges in Ukraine. Of course, not all of these constitute strategically important landmarks or crossroads, and not all are suitable, neither in terms of width nor construction, to transport heavy military equipment. Nonetheless, these facts hopefully help anyone to understand no bridges, no advance. In the first months of the war alone, over 300 bridges were destroyed in Ukraine, some by the Ukrainian army to halt the Russian advance, others by Russia to cut off Ukrainian supply lines. The battle for bridges is a vital part of the struggle for the strategic upper hand. So we would like to introduce the most significant bridges in Ukraine and what role they have played or will play during the war. Number 1, the Irpin Bridge. It connects the small satellite cities of Irpin and Bucha to the capital over the Irpin River. Most of you will remember the dramatic pictures of civilians fleeing over the rubble while the icy waters of the river rushed beneath them. From this bridge, the road leads directly to the capital Kyiv. Blowing it up was an unavoidable measure to ensure the defense of Ukraine's largest and most important city. It was not the only bridge destroyed, however. Also, the bridge connecting Irpin to Bucha between the two cities was hit. The Kyiv bridges. There are 7 altogether, 2 for trains. If the battle for the capital had actually reached the city, these bridges connecting the two banks, but also essentially the eastern and western parts of the country that are otherwise entirely separated by the river, would have become extremely vital points. The Kakhovka Dam crossing. As we know, Russia blew up the dam on June 6th, causing a massive environmental and humanitarian disaster. The main bridges in the city of Izium were destroyed at the beginning of the full-scale invasion to slow down a Russian advance. The strategically important town of Izium lies on the road between Kharkiv and Slavyansk. The bridges on the main road between Slavyansk and Liman, one for railroad and one for cars. This bridge is not that known, but it is hellishly important. The town of Liman is a major railroad hub used by Russia to resupply its troops. The bridge connected Liman to Slavyansk, one of the major cities in Donetsk that was briefly under separatist control in 2015. The Kerch Bridge, as discussed at the beginning of the episode. The Chonhar bridges are both rail and road crossings, connecting mainland Ukraine to occupied Crimea. Just this June, they were—
Hold up. I mean, I had to pause this real quick, Matthew, because I just saw something. They just said the road and rail bridges at Chonhar, and they highlighted these two. Now, I have to say this really quickly, because back in the day, I said that this was a rail bridge, and I got flamed for saying it was a rail bridge, but they just called it a rail bridge. I think they're actually both road bridges. I think we actually went through that. Let me go check real quick. Because if I understand correctly, let me look at it. That looks like an old road bridge. I think the railroad bridge is actually over here. And it is. So it appears that there may have been a small typo there in the video. But anyways, just wanted to make that clear because I got flamed for that back in the day, and I remember that both of these were actually road bridges, or one is a pedestrian bridge, which would be this one. But anyways, getting back to the video. And
mainland Ukraine to occupied Crimea. Just this June, they were hit, apparently by a British Storm Shadow missile to cut Russian supply routes. Last but not least, the Antonivsky Bridge in Kherson. The story of this bridge is basically the story of the war. It's 1.4 kilometers long and thus the largest and most important crossing point of the river Dnipro in southern Ukraine. While it was under Russian occupation, it was a target for Ukraine to cut off Russian supply lines. Now the tides have turned. Ukrainian forces have managed to cross the river under holding on to what is known as a bridgehead on the Russian-controlled side, which they have been trying to get rid of with suicide drones, artillery, and even ballistic missiles to prevent the Ukrainian army from gaining too much of a foothold and start bringing large amounts of troops over the water. Building bridges. When bridges are destroyed, you need new ones, and that takes time. In this time, you are vulnerable. In addition, the building of so-called pontoon bridges is described as one of the most deadliest and complicated undertakings. In very simple terms, you need to advance to the river. You need to cross it and establish what is called a bridgehead to control the other side and shield the troops that build the bridge from direct fire. Most armies have 2 types of bridges. The first are bridges that create so-called dry gap crossings. In this case, the bridge doesn't touch the water, but is usually supported by pillars. The second are wet gap crossings, or crossings in which the bridges are supported by the water, so they float. Either they are connected from one end to the other completely, or ferried and pulled in some way. The Russian Army's primary dry gap bridging capabilities are provided by the TMM-3 and the MTU-72. The wet gap bridging capabilities, the older PMP floating bridge system, and the more modern PP-2005 floating bridge system. Anyway, as described, building bridges costs time and manpower. If used correctly, the opposing force can use this time to turn the tides. When the Russian forces were advancing on Kyiv, damaging the Irpin River Dam on the so-called Kyiv Sea and flooding the adjacent basin was probably one of the most decisive factors in the defense of the city, since the Russians had managed to hold on and establish a pontoon bridge close to the village of Moshchun, just outside the capital. During an attempt to cross the Donetsk River near Rubizhne in May last year, the Russian army lost almost the entire 74th Motorized Rifle Brigade. More than 80 units of Russian equipment were also damaged. Since the war began, the Russians have lost 12 boats and 53 sections of floating bridge, according to the Dutch open source website Oryx. Anyway, that's it for this week. We hope you found our video interesting. Let us know in the comments, hit like and subscribe, and see you next week.
And that's the end of the clip right there. but a really interesting and great summary on the roads and bridges of Ukraine, and also how they function as far as strategic assets in the war. We've explained that many times on the channel about how important bridges are over the rivers, and how these areas are largely chokeholds on forces advancing, and can also be used to cut off the enemy from supply. And I think that was probably the best video we've ever seen that summarizes that into a very short, concise, and very easily explainable video. But with that, we're going to be moving on from that clip. Also, Mr. Diggs was talking about that in his super chat, which was pretty cool. And we're now going to be moving on to the town of Taganrog. Now, Taganrog sounds like some kind of a game that kids would come up with that has some form of violence added into a simple game of tag. I don't know why, but it just sounds like that. Nevertheless, Taganrog is a town that is near the area of Rostov-on-Don, and it's probably one of the larger ones in the Rostov-on-Don Bay. This is actually where most of the police forces came from that were supposed to put the Wagner down, but then ended up never entering the city, and then the few that did joined the Wagner side. And so Taganrog had a small little claim to fame for a short while during that short coup attempt. But now it's gotten a new claim to fame. It is the first city inside of Russia where we have seen a Ukrainian missile directly target a building inside of a city itself. It is not a target. It's not targeting air bases outside of the city. It's not targeting electrical infrastructure or anything similar. This missile actually attacked, I believe it was an FSB building that was inside of the town of Taganrog, and we can actually see that missile hitting the building right here. Check it out, folks. This is the closest I think we'll ever get. And here comes the missile right there, and we can see it hit the building right over there. This was the clearest footage I actually was able to get today. We'll watch it again. We can see the missile coming in from the top of the screen and slamming right into the building. And that was the most direct head-on film I had seen today. And so that was the one we decided to include. This missile appears to have caused some pretty significant damage. And not only that, there was multiple videos taken of this missile impact on the city today. And so here's another clip if it loads. The Russian military said it had shot down a Ukrainian missile over the Russian city of Taganrog. You know, reference that claim that was just made by the Russian military to the video clip we just saw a second ago, and tell me, is the technical term of shooting down the missile running into its target and exploding? Because if so, then it was shot down. If that's not the term, then it hit its target and it blew up. And that fragments of the missile had injured civilians and damaged buildings. At least 15 people were injured in the explosion near a cafe. In the southwestern Russian city near the border with Ukraine, the regional governor has said there was no immediate reaction from Ukraine, which rarely comments on attacks inside Russia or on Russian-controlled territory. Videos from the scene showed a low-rise building partly reduced to rubble. We now see some more footage of the damage that the missile has caused after it blew up inside the city. But from what we've heard so far, nobody was killed in the attack, and I also tried to make sure to check on that before we ran this news tonight, and once again, I did not hear any news of any Russian citizens being killed. From what we understand, the target was an FSB building inside of the town of Taganrog, and it appears that they were able to get a direct hit onto the building and destroy it. I don't know if any FSB members or officials were killed inside the building. We'll probably find that out at the end of the war, if they were, because the Russians would keep that news and information secret. But moving on into our last clip, we also saw some further consequences of the explosion of that missile inside the city.
Короче, это вот за Чеховсадом.
And it appears to have been a fairly beefy hit.
Тут, блядь, короче, пиздец. Но гриб был хороший, да, я видел, прям вообще такой черный, блядь. Ой, сейчас, если залезу. Оп. Блядь, не видно нихуя. Короче, вон она, вон воронка, блядь. А что здесь было вообще? Не знаю, мужик.
I gotta say, this was a lot of damage for a missile that was shot down.
Хрен его знает. Короче, тут вообще разруха.
Really quickly, let's go back and let's look at that clip again of the missile being shot down over the city, because it's great to see Russian air defenses working this way. It's called, I guess at this modern day and age, they call this direct impact air defense, where they stop the missile from hitting the city by hitting the missile with the city. So let's take a look at this again. Yeah, see, they shot it down right there. You see that, Matthew? They used the building to stop the missile.
Oh, that's a new technique. They used an object to shoot it down. I forgot.
That is a brand new technique, Matthew. That's something right there that the media probably wouldn't want you to know. The liberal media, they don't want you. They don't want you to know this, but the Russians have some kind of a weapon where they use the whole Earth to stop the missiles. It's absolutely incredible. Check it out. Look at this. Look at this. You're gonna see the missile come flying in. Wow, look at that. Boom. Boom! But anyways, that's the end of that clip right there, and it appears that the Ukrainians are starting to play ball with the Russians, and I don't know if the Russians are really liking that or not, because they're not really making a lot of a comment on this ordeal, so I'm guessing that some important people may have gotten schwacked inside that building, because that's usually what happens when some important people end up getting slaughtered in Russia, is that everyone just goes quiet on it and acts like it didn't happen. But anyways, we're going to be moving on from that and moving on out of Taganrog, and we're going to be moving on into the front lines. Let me know the location unknowns of Ukraine. Anyway, I can't do that voice too long because that's going to hurt my voice. But anyways, moving on to this clip, we saw a Ukrainian soldier enjoying the little things in life.
It's my first meal I was so lucky enough to find in my pocket this energy bar. It's so cool.
Now, if I'm remembering correctly, you know, I feel like I'm right on this. Isn't this Roman, you know, who got injured?
Maybe.
Because he looks
I
like
can't really
Roman.
tell.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, for some reason, like, I can't really tell if it is Roman or not, but that looks a lot like Roman.
Today, I lost a few combat brothers. Also, I destroyed a few invaders. I received so much emotions from my...
And it was just confirmed. We're going to be moving on from this clip because a lot of people are saying it's an old video, and it is an old video of Roman because I just got reminded of that. But anyways, moving on from that, we're going into the next clip where we saw the SBU arresting a suspect. Now, some of y'all may wonder, how in the world does the SBU arrest people who are giving information to the Russians in wartime? Well, we have a video to show y'all. Man, look at that.
The hell? Wait, what is this again?
They are arresting a Ukrainian who has been feeding information to the FSB about Ukrainian force locations and activities.
Oh, okay. That's why they're grabbing them.
Yeah, that's why they're grabbing him in the middle of the mall like he's some kind of a stray dog. Look at this, man. They go and take this guy down. I mean, they ain't playing.
Probably a little overkill, but they got to do what they got to do.
Man. You know, I can't even make any jokes. Anyways, with that, we're going to be moving on from that and into our next clip where we saw some interesting news. This was from Insight News, and they're giving us a little bit of an insight onto some news, if Twitter loads. The first U.S.-made Abrams tanks may appear on the battlefield in Ukraine by September. Source is Politico, citing informed sources. Isn't that nice? But anyways, moving on from that, the whole entire article explains that the Ukrainians should be expecting that the Abrams will arrive by September, just in time for fall warfare and also just in time for the winter as well. And so, great news to hear, and now we actually have a better timetable on when the Abrams will be arriving. With that, we're now going to be moving on into our next clip where we also saw something kind of funny. This is a picture made by a Russian soldier on the front lines. And they have a neat little table right here, Matthew, that they're putting their food and coffee on.
That's a Starlink dish, isn't it?
That's a Starlink, yeah. They don't know it. They're that stupid. They don't know it's a Starlink. But anyways, even if they knew, it doesn't matter, as the caption goes on to explain that Starlink services are cut off inside of Russian-occupied territory to prevent the Russians from using the Starlink system. So even if they knew it was a Starlink, they wouldn't be able to use it. But I have a feeling that these guys had no idea that this was a Starlink because they don't even have washing machines for the most part, and we're about to be getting to that in a minute.
Yeah. they probably read the back of it. It says Starlink. Oh, bliat, why would we need to link up with the star, bliat? Use it as table, bliat.
Bliat, Yuri Gagarin, bliat. That's probably what they're thinking, man. They're like, oh, this is probably for Soyuz, bliat. This is Yuri Gagarin. But anyways, moving on from that, and moving on to our last bit of location unknown news, we also got to see the Russian losses for the day, and they were good. They were juicy. Beefy even. Check it out.
Oh, we got a morsel. We got one Bobcat. Just one. And look, we got some wonderful graphics on the right.
Look at that. The Bobcat tribute.
That damn lag.
I'm telling you, Matthew, you're cutting out over there like you're on a Baofeng radio right now. Like, it's every other word comes in, and it's been doing that the whole stream. But let's see if we got any other memes rather than Jimmy D's, which was amazing, by the way. And let's see here. Oh, KJ put in a corgi in a bobcat. Very nice. Like it. Like it.
Hey.
Brenda put in a burning bobcat in a field. And Margaret put in a drone view of a moving bobcat. Brad put in a burning bobcat. Meg Flight put in a bobcat. Man. There were more memes than there were destroyed bobcats today. And that's really impressive, to say the least. And you know what else is really impressive? 560 Russian soldiers were liquidated today, along with 14 armored personnel carriers, 11 supply trucks, 4 tanks, 30 artillery pieces, 11 drones, an anti-aircraft system, and that one Bobcat. The losses today were very good. Moving on into the front lines, this is where the losses were happening. Starting off on the northeastern front near Svatove, we saw some Russian soldiers stealing a washing machine because they know tech. And one thing they know is that they don't have it, and they need it. And so they're looting another washing machine this late in the war. There they are. There's Vasily and Igor taking their washing machine through the fields. Where are they taking it? Who the hell even knows? But they are getting one. And so with that, that's the end of that clip. And we're now going to be moving on a little bit further south and into the area of Kremena, where we saw the Russians had tried to set a sneaky trap. But the Ukrainians are smart, and they were able to find it before it went off.
Дуже цікавий момент.
We see the Ukrainians showing the area, and we see an RPG-29 there on the ground, and inside of it is a very, very sneaky grenade. You can see an F1 grenade in there. And you see what would have happened is if you picked up the RPG-29 and this grenade had fallen out backwards, the pin has been pulled, and so the lever or the handle would go flying off, and then the fuse would go off and explode. So you would end up killing yourself with this little trap.
Ось такі справи.
And with that, that's the end of that clip, but you can see the Russians still trying to set some pretty devious traps. Moving on from that and down into the area of Bakhmut, we're going to be covering the past 48 hours of frontline movements in this area. Hopefully they've updated the map, and they have not. But in the past 24 hours, we could see that the Ukrainians have made a small advance towards Kurdamivka, and it appears that the noose is starting to be tied around the Kurdamivka area. And I have a feeling that the Russians are probably starting to feel that fairly well. But moving on to the two clips we got here, we got to see the 3rd Brigade in action again. And so, here's the clip.
If it'll load.
If it'll load! But anyways, here it is. We now see them unloading from the back of their APC here. And I think we're going through some lag right now. Yeah, we are. We're being floored right now.
Yes, we definitely are.
And so we'll be sitting here and waiting out this lag. And someone said, man, seems like you're kind of rushing this. Yeah, I am, because the lag is coming, and also the weather is coming as well. So trying to make sure to get out all the news, so that way, you know, it's out there. You know what I mean?
In the meantime, while we're waiting for the lag to clear up, did you see that my video got up to 112,000 views today? That's tremendous. It's egregious, preposterous, and atrocious.
What are you turning into, that attorney on Seinfeld? It is egregious, obnoxious.
Yes,
outright
I'm turning
atrocious.
into Jackie Charles.
That's it. But anyways, I think the lag is cleared up for the most part. Sorry, everyone, about the lag, by the way. Sadly, we don't get to control that kind of stuff on this channel. I know that some people would love for us to control the weather, but sadly, we don't have that ability. That's the National Security Agency. Don't let them know I told you that. We're still waiting for the check. Anyways, when you see them firing as they begin to advance into the tree line, and when you hear a large firefight continuing on as they move even deeper into the tree line, and now begin to shift so that way they can move upwards along the tree line.
Левее, рух! Двойками идем, давайте! Там можем в блиндажите вернуться.
We hear some artillery coming in that the Russians are trying to use to stop the Ukrainian push, but that won't be any success. You now see him lobbing a grenade into a dugout. And they're still advancing through the tree line, taking aim at some Russians and firing off a rifle grenade at them. We see something explode nearby, and we now see the Ukrainian moving back. See him getting up and continuing to fire. We now see them moving on to another outpost and clearing it. Oh, wait a minute. Hold up. Hold up right here. Is that ad placement? Is that product well, if it's product placement, if I've ever seen it, Matthew, that looks like a hollow sun.
It does. They kind of surprised that they're using those in such mass quantity.
Yeah, I would have to say. Pretty impressive.
That damn lag, I'm telling you. I'm telling you.
Oh, man, I'm telling you. I think we're still lagging, aren't we? Oh, man. No,
yes,
actually,
very badly. It's like a 30-second delay.
OBS says we're not lagging, actually, so that's good news, at least. At least they're saying we're not lagging, but we're still kind of lagging. Anyways. Oh, man, I'm telling you. And now we can see them advancing through the tree line again.
Парни, будете жить, зачем умирать?
Выходите! Пацаны, не стреляйте! Пацаны, без брони, без оружия, с поднятыми руками!
It sounds like they're yelling to some Russian soldiers right there.
Мы не стреляем, проходите, мы не будем стрелять. Там сколько осталось?
We hear them continuing to talk, and we now see the Russian soldiers coming up and surrendering here. It appears there's 3 of them. Nope, 4 of them. And we can see them right there. We can see the Ukrainian machine gunner eyeballing him as they continue to move up.
Четвертый, выходи! Давай, 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 за пацанами!
And I think the lag is cleared.
I think so.
Nah, it hasn't. Nah, it hasn't. But we can see the Russians still walking forward. We can see the Ukrainian soldiers beginning to process the prisoners.
Also, by the way, I see some folks asking, kind of off topic, by the way, but some folks are asking about the fiber optic thing. We have it at the street, but we got to get it run to the house. And it's rather expensive to get it run to the house. A lot more than we thought it would cost. So we might hope it out on this internet, especially since we're cutting back streams. It might not make sense to put that much money into running fiber from the street.
And so there's y'all's answer, because that was something we looked into a while ago. And then, you know, and then of course there are people in the live chat who go, wow, y'all should really fix the internet. And it's like, hey, thanks for the input. But there's really no way we can that's cost effective. So, you know, unless we want to go broke, then we could probably fix the internet. But, you know, don't really want to go broke. There's a lot going on in the future. You know, there's law school. There's
you would think that they would make it. You would think they would make it somewhat reasonably priced to run the stuff from the street to your house. It's like, you know, what the hell? It's like they're going to put it at the street and then like charge out at like crazy kazoo to get it run to your house. Like, what's that about?
What's this, Jack? You're gonna charge the Mickey Mouse prices, Disney World prices. What the hell, man? But anyways, moving it on.
I mean, can I take you outside? Can we go outside?
Oh, yeah, you want to go outside, Fatty?
Behind the barn?
Oh, wait a minute. No, not behind the barn. Not behind the barn. But anyways, with that, we're going to be moving on to the next clip where we saw an FPV drone hit a Russian outpost. I got to tell you, man, lag is infuriating, and now they're playing some AC/DC song, which is max copyright. And then we can see the Russian outpost right there. And we're about to see the 4th Rapid Response Brigade, which is actually Operator Starsky's brigade, fling this FPV drone right into the outpost. Check it out. Someone said, they hook up fiber for free here. Well, I'm jealous because they don't do it here.
No, they definitely don't do it.
Nah, hell no, they don't.
We had to get the regular internet and run from the house, run from the street to the house as well, which is also crazy expensive just for that. But the fiber's even more expensive. It's messed up the way the internet works out in Alabama, the way you set the whole service up.
And I thank you so much, Matthew, for sometimes saying 3 sentences at the same time. I think this is truly an amazing feat of speaking abilities. And we can see here... Oh, man, I'm telling you, the video's lagging and everything. But we can see them being hit again. And that's the end of the clip. But great to see and good to know that they've been knocking out Russian forces in that area. Now, to start moving forward at a little bit of a quicker speed, because there is still stuff to cover and we are starting to run out of time just due to the sheer amount of lag that we've been having, we're now going to be moving on into the area of Shakhtarsk, where we saw an oil depot on fire. Check this out as the video loads. There we go, the video's loading, the fires are burning, and good things have come to the Russians. And we see them trying to put out the fire, but of course that's going to be largely unsuccessful. And so with that, that's the end of that clip. Great to see. And at the same time, we also saw the Ukrainians striking into Donetsk. We saw that the Ministry of Internal Affairs for the DPR was blasted today. Check it out.
Минимальный, вообще, который не обращаешь внимания. Мы с ним тоже по этому поводу общались.
Oh, блядь, the world didn't, блядь.
Сука, блядь, пиздец, иди нахуй. There they go. They literally just did it right there at the end. They went, пиздец, иди нахуй. And then the last thing they were going to see before they died is moloko, milk. What the hell? Like, what a weird advertisement. You know, it's like, out of everywhere you could have gone, this coffee shop is advertising they have milk. Like, it's like, isn't that kind of default? You know, doesn't every coffee shoppy have milk?
Coffee shoppy.
Like, don't they? But anyways, with that, we're going to be moving on from that. Great to see the Ministry of Internal Affairs was hit. And moving on into the area of Lozove, we saw that a Russian T-72 was destroyed in this area. Check it out.
Так, начинаем снимать утренний обзор на танк Т-72. Уже сгоревшего.
Man, look at that thing. It is roast.
Ой, даже тут еще горит, ёкарный бабай. Трансмиссия отлетела, что-то тут. Вот башенка. Короче, все вкусно и красиво.
Love to see it. Love to see it. We're now going to be moving on from that clip in the Donetsk region. Not really a lot of frontline advances happened here. And of course, everyone knows what happened down here in the southern front. And so, with that, that is all of the... Well, actually, that's not all of the news today. Because we have the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. If it loads. Alright, here we go. Here we go. Here's the speech. And it appears that Zelenskyy was also dealing with lag because it's only a 2-minute long speech. No water break from me. And so, is it going to load? Or is it not? We
want Zelenskyy.
We want Zelenskyy. Come on, give us Zelenskyy.
Dear Ukrainians,
No, we want the Ukrainian. Wait, that is the Ukrainian track. What the hell is it doing? It's going to give me the
Бажаю
There we
здоров'я,
go.
шановні українці і українки. Сьогодні був важливий і хороший день. Вранці з нагоди Дня Державності мав честь привітати і відзначити нагородами наших захисників і захисниць. Золоті зірки Героям України, хрести бойових заслуг, ордени Богдана Хмельницького, ордени за мужність. Мав честь вручити і почесні відзнаки бойовим бригадам та прикордонним загонам. Щасливий, що у нас є такі воїни. Вручив і паспорти громадянина України нашим юним хлопцям та дівчатам. Серед них діти наших воїнів, діти загиблих наших героїв. Діти. Держава може і повинна відкрити для них абсолютно всі можливості жити гідно, цивілізовано, безпечно, жити вільно для кожного нового покоління українців і українок. І дуже вірю в ці нові покоління, в наших дітей і вдячний їм за віру в Україну. Сьогодні відбулася і важлива міжнародна зустріч. Прем'єр-міністр Катару був у Києві, дуже плідні переговори. Найважливіше, Катар буде з нами в реалізації формули миру, приєднується до спільних глобальних зусиль, домовились про співпрацю для повернення українських дітей, які були депортовані в Росію. Обговорили ситуацію навколо Чорноморської зернової ініціативи і дуже важливо, щоб на світовому продовольчому ринку не було жодних дефіцитів та спровокованих Росією криз. Це питання глобальної стабільності. Дякую Катару за відповідальну позицію. Ще одне. Наші міжнародники готують доволі вагомі рішення для України, для наших воїнів. Робимо максимум зараз. Робимо це не публічно, щоб результати наших воїнів, які побачать всі, теж могли стати максимальними. Я дякую всім, хто допомагає посилювати Україну. Я дякую кожному і кожній, хто зараз в бою. Ще раз вітаю з Днем Української державності та Днем хрещення Русі України. Слава Україні!
And Slava Ukraine! And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Zelenskyy on 520 of the war, and that is the beginning of a new phase and a new chapter in this channel. It's time for us to go over all of the questions that have been thrown into the live chat tonight, the top ones of the night, the ones that everyone have been talking about nonstop. Matthew's been paying attention to everything everyone's been saying. He's like an all-seeing eye. And that's absolutely incredible because you see people get executed down there for the most egregious offenses in record time. It is like same-day shipping from Amazon Prime, but in terms of swift justice. But still, moving on from that, he's also been looking at what everyone's been saying as leading questions of the night and put them into polls. So that way we can see what all of you are thinking on some of the top subjects of the day. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so moving into our last segment of polls and questions, our very first poll says the National Bank of Ukraine says to expect a closure of grain exports until the end of the war. And what are your thoughts? 52% said that's a wise preparation by Ukraine. 23% said that's premature. Let's wait and see. 13% said I need more information. And 12% said unsure. And for me, I was kind of shocked to hear this because apparently Ukraine has already gone ahead and made up their minds that the grain exports are going to be halted. For whatever reason, like I said earlier, we're not sure if Turkey has backed out of their promise or what has happened. Apparently, Ukraine has gotten wind of some intel indicating that they won't be able to continue exporting their grain. So, Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that also apparently does indicate that they've found some reason to believe they'll never be able to export grain until the end of the war, and that's a little unfortunate, but I'm sure that they're making that decision with a lot of information behind them that maybe we're not privy to in the public. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and real quick, got to get a couple of trolls out of the chat. Got to get them up out of here, and they're gone. So moving on to our next poll, it says, yesterday Prigozhin met in St. Petersburg with foreign leaders, and is Prigozhin really exiled? 48% said no, he is free to go where he wants. 22% said yes, he needs Putin's permission. 17% said I thought so, but unsure. And 13% said unsure. And to me personally, I don't think Prigozhin is like Conor McGregor. The champ does what he wants. He does what he wants. I don't think so. I think Prigozhin does need Putin's permission to come back. And he probably got it, would be my assumption, when he came back to meet with these foreign leaders in St. Petersburg. because nothing happens inside of Russia without Putin's blessing. So if he didn't want it to happen, it's not going to happen. The coup was the exception. But I think Putin is trying to reclaim his control. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to agree with that wholeheartedly. Nothing happens in Russia without Putin's blessing, and especially considering he was at the BRICS summit where Putin was. That would be a little weird for him to be in the same building and Putin wouldn't have any control or any authority to have him out of Russia if he didn't want to. So I would say that was certainly with Putin's blessing, and it's showing that Priggy Boy isn't all the way out of the circle yet, apparently. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next poll says, reports say Abrams tanks will be delivered to Ukraine no earlier than September this year. And what are your thoughts? 48% said the U.S. is stalling once again. 32% said they're in transit and OPSEC reasons. 15% said it takes time to get them there. And 5% said they could at least give a date. And I did mention this earlier in today's short war summary. A lot of people were saying that they were probably in transit already and are keeping it quiet. To me, I don't understand why they would need to do that, because it's not like the, giving a date for the tanks arriving is really going to cause anything bad to happen. So I would say, personally, I think the U.S. is stalling once again. They're using the same tactic on the Abrams that they're using on the F-16s. I think the U.S. is getting cold feet about giving Ukraine these higher tech weapons, and I think they're going to stall until people forget about it. But Enforcer, you.
I would say that they're trying to stall maybe a little bit, but we do have a clear window of when they'll arrive at this point, which is sometime in September. So it's good to hear that there is a finalized date somewhere.
Well, they said no earlier than September, but they didn't give a date.
Ah, I see. That may be a stalling tactic right there, because that's what they've done on a lot of things that have ended up taking forever to get there. So I would agree it may be another stalling tactic by the United States. And so with that, I hope we address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our last poll says, today the U.S. announced a $345 million military aid package to Taiwan, and why do you think that is? 37% said China plans to move on Taiwan, 38% said it's a show of force effort, 20% said it's standard preparations and totally normal, and 6% said unsure. And on this one, on Taiwan, I'm really not exactly sure why we're sending that weaponry right now. I haven't seen anything in the public sphere indicating that significant moves on Taiwan since the last time they did. I would assume it's probably a show of force effort, so I'd agree with the 38%, and maybe it's simply trying to deter China, and that's the next step. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that it's most likely a show of force attempt. Don't think the Chinese are going to be going to war with Taiwan anytime soon. A lot of people have been saying that ever since the beginning of the Ukraine war last year, is that the war in Taiwan will begin tomorrow, and it has not. I don't think it's going to happen. I think this is a show of force to try and deter the Chinese and make the Taiwanese look a lot more tougher to fight, considering the amount of military aid that we'll be sending to them. And so with that, I hope that does address that poll fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and with that being said, we are moving into our Super Chat questions. And up first, we have a $50 donation from PETA, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Peter, for the support. PETA. And he said, do you think the delay in sending some of the tanks, etc., is to update them according to new defensive requirements? For example, Russian missile and electronic upgrades, and also excellent channel.
And thank you so much for the kind words. Thank you for enjoying the channel and supporting us to help us to keep this thing running. Now, to answer that question, tell me, Matthew, how did you take the question? Is the failure for weapons to arrive for the Russians in the war or for the West?
Let's see. Do you think the delay in sending some of the tanks? Let's see. Blah, 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 blah. I think he means, is the West having to retrofit the Abrams before they actually send to Ukraine to match the Russian upgrades that were recently put on the Russian tanks?
I would say no, because that would mean that we were sending the most advanced weaponry that the United States has or any Western country has at their disposal. And for the most part, most countries are making sure to hold back their punches on sending the most modern and advanced equipment they have. And we're seeing mostly older stuff. The M1A2, sure, is a fairly new tank. In fact, it's the one that's in service right now in the U.S. military. But at the same time, it is a little dated, and that's why we're seeing that the U.S. Army is once again looking to replace the M1 Abrams with the, I believe it's the X Abrams or something similar, which is a more modernized and upgraded version. And so apparently the M1A2 as we know it is kind of on the way out. And also, I don't know what SEP variant the M1A2s we are sending are. I don't know if they're SEP 2s or SEP 3s. I'm not really sure. So that would also play into factor a little bit. I don't think we're trying to upgrade them at all. I think we're probably just trying to get usable operational Abrams, and that may be what's taking some time, is having to make sure that these Abrams are running operational and all of their seals, gaskets, and so on are actually operational, instead of sending them over where they've all dry rotted in storage in a place like Anniston, Alabama, and then none of them operate. And then the Ukrainians have to go through the process of getting them operational. So that's why I think it's probably taking a while, but at the same time, it shouldn't take that long, because the U.S. military has been able to turn Abrams around at the Anniston Army Depot here in Alabama, I believe, in a matter of a month or two. And so it shouldn't take that long, considering that the announcement to send Abrams was made sometime in late February or early March this year. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope that we were able to answer that question fairly well based off of what we know. And also, some people are saying that we are sending them M1A1s. I'm fairly certain that I heard from the Department of Defense it was the M1A2s we were sending. Abrams to Ukraine. Let me make sure that's correct, because maybe I misheard that. So this is from Politico. And let's see what we got here. Actually, the Department of Defense was right down there. That's probably a better source. And this was on May 15th of this year. Let's see here.
And also, by the way, I just looked up. Politico was where the information is coming from, that everyone's saying that they'll arrive no earlier than September. That's the source. And they apparently got that from a national security person.
Okay, so it is a confirmed source that they will be making it there probably sometime around September, maybe October. But getting back to the defense statement to make sure that they're the right variant of Abrams, the U.S. announced that it would deliver the tanks armed with advanced armor and weapons in January. Originally, the U.S. planned on procuring new M1A2 tanks to send to Ukraine, using funds from Ukraine's Security Assistance Initiative. However, the Department of Defense decided in March to refurbish M1A1 Abrams tanks already in U.S. inventory to shorten the timeline. So that's so everyone is correct, actually. It was changed at some point from when I heard it, where it was the M1A2 Abrams to now it's the M1A1 Abrams. We're most likely changing, now knowing that information, we're most likely changing the variant of the tank to the M1A1, because the Marine Corps just went and retired several hundred M1A1s. In fact, the Marines don't even have tanks anymore, and all of their M1A1s are just sitting around really doing nothing. So we're probably trying to get rid of all of that depot space, well, free up that depot space by just sending the retired M1A1s from the Marine Corps over to Ukraine, so that way the Ukrainians could use them. So thank you all for clarifying that, because I actually thought they were still M1A2s, and I hope that also clarifies a little bit of the answer fairly well. And thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Margaret Hemsley, and she put in a $27 donation. And thank you very much, Margaret, for that support. She said, "I'm continually impressed by you both," and thank you. And they said, "Your parents must be very proud of you, and give my regards to them, and use us toward your fees, which will not be cheap, and take a live chat question, because I have none." And also, thank you very much, Margaret, for the kind words.
And thank you so much. Was that Mark?
Margaret.
Oh, you said Mark. I was like, wait a minute, I thought that was Margaret Hemsley, but still.
No, I could have sworn I said Margaret.
I on my end, it must have been the microphone cutting out, because I heard Mark. And that may have been you saying Margaret, and then the mic just cut out, and I just heard Mark. And I was like, what? I was like, I thought that was Margaret. But anyways, thank you so much for the support, Margaret, and helping this channel to keep on running. Because it does mean a lot that you've been around with us for a very long time. And also, thank you so much for the kind words as well. Our parents are very proud of us, actually, for what we've done and what we've been able to do over this entire war. And it's amazing to have parents like we have, because there's really just no other parents out there like them in the world. They really are the reason why we act the way we act and we are who we are. And if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have turned out the way we did. And so I've got to give them massive credit. Both our mom and our dad was a massive part of our lives, and they've been very proud of us, and we've been very proud to have them as our mom and dad. So thank you so much once again for the kind words, and we will be making sure to grab a live chat question. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
In the live chat question goes to Primo Victoria, who says, "Do you think Ukraine will get anything for the Black Sea? If not, they could always be in a quote-unquote check."
I don't think they'll be getting anything for the Black Sea. If you're talking about their navy, nothing can really make it to the Ukrainian navy because it has to transit through Ukrainian waters and it would be destroyed before it gets to Ukraine. And there's really nothing they can do about the Russian blockade either, unless those Russian ships are to get close to Ukrainian shores and then be destroyed by anti-ship missiles. So unfortunately, there really isn't anything they can do down there in the Black Sea against the Russians right now. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again, Margaret, for sponsoring that live chat. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $25 super chat from Santiago Flores. And thank you very much, Santiago, for the support. He says, for the college fund for college, or excuse me, for the coffee fund for college. A lot of reading and research, guys. And I wish you the best and cheers.
And thank you so much for wishing us the best. And thank you also for the coffee fund for college. Now we're starting to divide the coffee fund into stuff for the stream and stuff for college. And college, well, law school, you know, that's really weird to say law school. It's really weird to even think that we went all the way through college and we both have bachelor's degrees right now. That's just kind of weird when you think about it, because I don't really feel like I have a college degree. I just feel the same I have throughout all of history, but still, now I have a college degree, so that's pretty cool. But still, thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and thank you for wishing us well in law school. It's going to be a journey. We're really excited to get to it, and I can't wait to finally get to law school and see what it's about. I'm hoping that it's something where we learn a lot and we see a lot and we get to do a little. We're not going to be doing a lot in law school. We're going to be doing a very small amount of things. But I've got to thank you so much once again for the best wishes, because it means a lot that a lot of folks have been supporting us and carrying the flag as we continue to move on into the next chapter of our lives, which is law school. And funnily enough, y'all were around for chapter 2 of our lives, which was college. Y'all got to see that, about the last half of that, in person. And that's crazy to think, too. We got through college, Mandy, I think both you and me, in 3 years flat, getting a bachelor's degree. And this war started a year and a half ago, so they were watching probably when I was a sophomore still, and then I went through being a junior, a senior, and graduating, and y'all were around, and the stream was around the entire time that happened.
That's true. That's true. And also, I see someone is very adamant in the chat. Run! Law school sucks! I tell you, typically anything that really, you know, is, let's say, monumental, it typically takes a lot of effort. And also, I'm older, by the way, whoever asked that question. But, you know, some things are tougher. It'll probably be a grind for 3 years in law school. I'm totally fine with that. I'm ready for that challenge totally, completely. And also, it's required to get through to go and be a lawyer, so you got to get it done. So it's just a hurdle to get through.
It's required for both of our futures, you know, and even if we don't become an attorney, we still need to go to law school and we have to pass the bar. It's just something that we must do for multiple reasons. Enforcer for President, you know, his name, it indicates a lot of why I kind of need a law degree. And also, I see my little mouse cursor loading. Are we lagging? No, we're not. That's weird. Nope. I don't know why I did that. But still, I thank you so much once again for the support. And college is going to be something of a big deal. Well, law school will be something of a big deal. I don't think it's going to suck, because I've learned something in my life is that nothing ever really sucks as long as you kind of put your nose to the grindstone. The only thing I can really think of that sucked was this one psychology class I took in college that was just ridiculously stupid. I mean, you know, now that I'm out of college and I have a bachelor's degree, it's not really like I have to talk great about the college anymore for fear of repercussion, but it was just such a stupid class, because I remember it was an introductory course to psychology. It was a level 100 class, and I had to remember on one of the quizzes the exact age of a baby, like the literal age of the baby, and the month of the year that they put an electrode into its head and shocked it, which was completely pointless to the whole theory that this sick experiment created in psychology. Completely beside the point, but you had to remember such stupid mundane facts like that you didn't even really focus on what you were supposed to be learning about psychology. You were more focused on just the exact details of when people were having electrodes put into their heads and shocked, you know, and it was so weird. And also, that psychology class kind of taught me by the end of it that, 1, I hate psychology, 2, psychology seems like a sham, and 3, the people who are in psychology are just sick and messed up due to the experiments that they would run on people. You know, it's like Unit 731 crap, but it's just being run in a normal office somewhere in like Little Rock, Arkansas, where someone decided, hey, what if I just You know, like, I forgot what the baby's name was. I think it was like Alfie or something like that. What if we just pulled him
The
away?
baby.
Yeah, the baby. Let's go. But anyways, what if we just pulled him out of his mother's arms and just put him into a dark room for 7 days a week, and he got no emotional support? How would this kid grow up? Messed up. I mean, like, obviously that would be the answer. This kid is going to grow up to be a messed up sociopath, and they had to run an experiment and turn a sweet little innocent baby into a messed up sociopath for the rest of his life to find out something you could already just know from common sense. And, you know, I gotta be honest with y'all, I if y'all didn't know, I really don't like psychology at all. To me, it's like witchcraft or something similar. It's just bogus. You know, like you can get some things from common sense. You know, like going outside and touching grass, that's going to be good for you. You know, that's something you can kind of know already. You don't have to run an experiment where some kid lives in a concrete basement for 4 years to find out that touching grass is needed. You know, that's.
Did you ever hear about the experiment where, I think it was like, I don't know which Ivy League college it was, but the entire class had conspired with the professor to pull a experiment on this one student in the class, and they would segregate this kid on his own. They wouldn't talk to him, and they did that day in, day out, and finally this kid went crazy or something and lost it because, you know, he couldn't take it. And did you ever hear about that?
That was Ted Kaczynski, wasn't it?
I think that was Ted Kaczynski. I think so. But that was messed up. And I think that was funded by the CIA, too.
I don't know about the CIA. I don't know if it was funded by the CIA. It was funded by someone, though. I remember that. And also, well, wait a minute. It wasn't just that, Matthew. Remember, they did a debate club thing, and they found, like, they mentally profiled him, first off, and they found out that he was a certain kind of mental profile, which is susceptible to whatever they were trying to do. And so they're like, this is the guy. You know, he's a little bit mentally unstable. And they brought him into a debate club, and it was supposed to be a debate club full of freshmen in college so that way they could learn how to debate. But instead, every single day, they just put him up against seniors that he didn't know were seniors that would just slaughter him every single time he went into this debate class. And the whole entire thing was meant to tear him down or something like that, and it worked, actually. And that was, largely from what we understand, that was actually the catalyst of why the Unabomber would eventually turn into the Unabomber, is because they tipped his mental scale in his freshman year of college, and then he just went and lost it pretty much. So, you know, that's something that I always find messed up, and it's always goofy psychology experiments like that. Like, gee, what if we take the guy who's a little off and we mess with him a little bit? What will happen? It's like, well, bad things will happen. You know, it's like I don't have to do an
back in the day when they literally had no limits, like on ethical considerations whatsoever for these projects. And let's don't be naive. They still go on today, but I think they've gotten better at covering them up.
Well, you know, that's something for a whole other time. But I always find the concept of, you know, doing stupid experiments that you already know the answer to be a little stupid. You know, if y'all get what I'm saying. Like, you know, like something like that, like with the whole Ted Kaczynski thing, it's like, don't you already know that messing with the weird kid is going to make him go mental? You know, it's like, that's something you don't really need to do an experiment for. You can just observe that in normal daily life. You know, it's kind of like also isolating a kid from their parents, or this one social experiment that was really messed up that I had to learn about in psychology as well. And they actually, and what's weird about the psychology class is that they actually acted like this was some groundbreaking stuff that they were talking about, and it was just heinous experiments. Like the most heinous crap you can imagine. Like, for example, there was this nursery, Matthew, I forgot where it was, but it was in the 1930s, and they decided, hey, let's have the nurses be total assholes to these little kids. They're like 4 and 5 years old, and just berate them every day, and then just cherish these other kids in the class every single day, and let's see what happens. And they found out what happens is that if you berate the kids every single day, they end up developing stutters, and they don't learn well, and they're depressed. You know, it's like, I could tell you that.
Who would have known?
Yeah, I could tell you that without having to mentally torture kids that will impact them for the rest of their lives. And what's always messed up about these psychology experiments is that they also do them almost consistently on kids or people that have a mental problem. You know, it's always like vulnerable groups that the psychologists always go and mess with.
Man, they used to grab, like the CIA used to grab people off the street. I'm not sure exactly where they used to do that, but they would grab people off the street, put them in the mental asylum, claim that they were insane, and then perform all kinds of like horrific like experiments on them to test out these like 6 theories that they were trying to. I think it was called MK Ultra or something like that.
I don't know about that one much. I'm saying that to everything pretty much. I'm like, I don't know about that one much, but One thing
That
I
was
know.
a real program. It's not a conspiracy theory. They've admitted to it now.
Well, yeah, but I still don't really want to comment on much because we'll get tinfoil hat people in here, and and then it goes somewhere else. The moon's fake and the Earth is flat and everything. But moving on from that and talking about the experiments that were just funded by universities or just run by some random psychologist somewhere, it's just messed up stuff. And I'm like, this stuff you didn't even need to do. You could have just known it. You could have just written down in a book. Yelling at kids that are 4 to 5 years old constantly and making them feel like idiots will make them feel like they're an idiot. I feel like that's just common sense. Feel like we can largely move on without having to test that theory. So anyways, with that, we've rabbit holed on that one for so long. Thank you so much for the support, though, and I hope that does address that fairly well. But beyond that, nothing really sucks that bad. Law school ought to be fine. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and with that being said, our next one goes to Barry Woodward, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Barry, for the support. He says, Lawyer Caffeine Fund started. And thank you for starting it.
And thank you for starting the fund and also helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And also, Matthew, someone just said, if it weren't for so many wrong-headed people running around thinking Scooby-Doo is communist, then we wouldn't need so many psych majors. Hey, listen, pal, listen. Here's what I'm saying, man. You see Freddy? You seen Freddy lately? You see him wearing that young pioneer uniform? That man is a communist, all right? He's working for the Communist Party, all right? Now, don't give me no crap. He's riding around a Scooby-Doo van. He's got a bunch of hippies with him. He's dressed like a young pioneer. That man is a member of the Communist Party, and McCarthy and his boys need to put him down. They need to get him out of here. But anyways, moving on from that, and I know you're just joking, by the way. That's a funny one, though. But with that, we are on to the next one. But thank you so much for starting the law school fund.
Indeed. And up next, we have a $20 super chat from BC Skyman, who says, coffee and donuts. Exciting times, guys, and congratulations. And thank you very much, BC, for the coffee and the donuts. And I haven't had a donut in a very long time, but I have had pizza. But thank you very much for the support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And thank you so much for the support, BC Scammon, and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, thank you for the coffee and donuts. Well, we always love a little bit of coffee and donuts around here. Haven't had donuts in a while. Haven't had coffee, though. I have coffee every night. I got to tell you, I drink too much coffee. Lots of it. Hundreds of milligrams. I don't know. Why in the world, man, I was just thinking right there when I was saying that. Why in the world am I turning into that detective guy from Seinfeld? You know, the book detective?
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you something, pal.
Book detective.
Yeah, you remember the book detective?
No.
Dude, that was like one of the best episodes ever.
Humdrum.
Yeah, you were like, no. But it was like one of the best episodes ever. I'd suggest, Matthew, after the stream, you pull up the clip. It's like 4 minutes long. It shows him in it. I think he was like a big movie detective guy back in like the 50s and 40s and stuff. And he was like, oh yeah, I'll tell you something, mister. You think that's not a big deal. You think that's nothing great. But what about the kid down at the library? The kid who wants to read a book, who opens it up and learns some knowledge. And he's like that the whole time. It was great. It was one of the best episodes. But anyways, thank you so much for the support for coffee and donuts. We love coffee and donuts. We need to get a donut sometime around. But with that, thank you so much once again for being an old guard of the channel, BC Skyman, and of course, helping this thing to keep on running. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, real quick, something that I forgot to mention is we actually tried a new place rather than Five Guys. We love them, but they're too expensive.
Wait.
We tried a place called Kava.
Oh, wait a minute.
What?
That may be a little.
No, we tried a place called Kava.
Well, Matthew.
No, it's not. It's a place. There's multiple.
Oh, okay.
It's called a place called Kava, and unfortunately, going to get all worked up. He literally said the name of the school I used to go to before, but no, it's a place called Kava. If I can get on with the story, and they have Mediterranean food, and it's like a pita wrap, not the Peter the Horse meme, but it's like a pita wrap with like chicken and avocado in it. Very good, and I recommend y'all try it. They give us an extra one too, so they've got my business. But I definitely recommend it. It's very good. But unfortunately, would you like to weigh in?
Yeah, now that Matthew said this Kava, we have tried this place called Kava. It's pretty good. Honestly, though, I tried falafel for the first time today. I gotta be honest with y'all, I wasn't really that quite of a fan of it. It tasted like grass clippings in Hush Puppy. And I was just like, that's not that great. I thought it would taste like meat. Nah, it didn't. It just tasted like grass clippings. But still, the chicken thing, the chicken avocado thing, whatever that is really good. And so I would rate that 100%. Also, I didn't know there was multiple of them, Matthew. So I was like, that's OPSEC. I was like, but anyways, with that, thank you so much, everyone, once again, for making Matthew mention a new restaurant, because it's pretty good, I'm not going to lie. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Trister1, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Trister, for the support. He says, Corgi College Fund and a chat question, please. I'm sure the Corgis will be pleased with that. They do need some education. But, Enforcer, what say you?
And thank you so much for the support, and thank you for the Corgi Law School Fund. Corgis do have to go eventually to law school. They have to learn something. Mr. Corgi and Baby Sheba can't sit around just looking cute all day. You can't get by in life just doing that. So eventually they will have to go out there. They'll have to go to law school and get a job or something. Stop being bums. But still, thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we will make sure to get a live chat. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
And the live chat question is going to go to Christian Cruz, who says, any news about these small diameter bombs?
Yes. According to United 24, they are there and they have been used in limited numbers. And so with that, I hope that addresses that question fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Chase Maddie, who puts in a $15 donation, and thank you very much, Chase, for that support. He said, could you pull up those Soviet trench digging machines? No wonder the Russians were able to make so many fortifications and keep destroying those special equipment.
And let's see here. Let me get that. Look, it's an old Soviet trench digging machine. If the pictures load off screen. For the love of God, load! Man, I'm telling you, the whatever's going on with the internet tonight is really getting me angry. I'm telling you. Alright, here we go. We got this little stupid, goofy...
I'm telling you.
Oh, man, I'm telling you. There's the trench digging machine.
Well, that's whack.
That's whack. But you know what else is
Janky
whack?
even.
You know what else is whack? Crack. Crack is whack. But this thing is hideous. But it does dig a trench. Now, I'll tell you that. This thing digs a trench in record time. So it's hideous. It does work, though. But it's stupid. But yes, that's probably why they were able to dig trenches, and that's also why their trenches are probably straight lines, because imagine having to turn this thing and then dig the trench every single time you wanted to. That would be a very laborious process, so it would be easier to just have this thing set up where it digs in a straight line. And some people are asking, are those shovels? Yeah, he's a trumpeter. Oh, no, we don't want to look at the model. We want to look at the thing deployed. Come on, there we go. So you can see the thing deployed, and it does have these little shovels, and it digs it up, and it throws it right out. Pretty neat system, not gonna lie, but really stupid, you know, and it looks dumb. Let's see here. What other pictures can we get of this thing that are just goofy? Well,
man, that machine be looking goofy.
Man, that machine be looking goofy. And here goes our stream lag again, right when I said goofy, YouTube went, you know what's goofy? Your internet connection. And then started to throttle it. But anyways, with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And also, Common V said, I like falafel with tzatziki sauce. Well, to be honest with you, I think anything would taste good with tzatziki sauce. Hell, I think grass would taste good with tzatziki sauce, which means probably go good with falafel, at least the falafel I tasted today. I told Matthew, because I'm not really a picky eater, Matthew can tell you that. I usually just, usually whenever I'm eating, I just say I'll have whatever anyone else is having. I just pick something and then eat it. So I told him today, pick out something new on the menu, and I'll just try it, and I'll tell you if it's good or not. And so he picked out that thing, and I got to be honest with you. It was okay. I mean, you can eat it, but it's not anything you'd want to eat again, you know, like just really go, wow, I love that falafel pita wrap thing. Nah, it was something like, you know, if I had to eat it, I could, but, you know, I wouldn't want to go out of my way to eat it. Now, the chicken avocado thing they have there, that's something I'd go out of my way to eat. I'd be like, I'd like that chicken avocado thing right now. Thank you. Because that thing was really good. It's got some spicy chicken. What, Matthew?
I would like one of those right now. Oh, you said that was so weird.
Well, I'm telling you, man, I'm trying to pick up the right kind of accent here. But anyways, with that, I hope we've covered and rabbit holed on food a little bit fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Junebug72. And thank you very much for that support. They said, I have too many questions, lols, and please give to someone with only one. And meanwhile, I'm hanging on, taking it all in. And happy you guys are on tonight, and love Ukraine.
Thank you so much for the support. And I can tell you this. we will probably, and you know, I want to almost make a guarantee on this, but I can't really be certain. We will probably be on our normal streaming schedule after last night until the law school starts, weather prevailing, of course, because I didn't really know what to do last night. I just kind of sat around and I was like, why in the world are we rolling back like this? We'll just do a cold shutdown, most likely. Well, really, we're kind of playing it by ear, but we're most likely just going to cold shutdown as soon as the law school starts. We'll probably start rolling back streaming schedules then. And so that's how it's working. So thank you so much for being glad we're on tonight, as this may actually be pretty regular for the next, you know, week or two. And thank you so much once again for enjoying this channel and helping us to keep this thing rolling. And Matthew, did they want a live chat?
Yes.
And let's get to it then.
All right, and the live chat question goes to Carolyn Evans, who says, has there been any developments with the nuclear plant, and the water is practically gone? Am I correct?
The water is... I don't know if the cooling pond water is practically gone. That I don't know. So I'd have to declare ignorance on that for now, because satellite images, the last we got, showed that it actually had water in it still. The power plant is in a state of hot shutdown right now, meaning that the reactors are active, but they're not producing enough electricity to go to the grid. So it is a little bit more of a sketch situation than we've seen before, but nothing serious has really evolved there at the moment, beyond it being in a state of hot shutdown. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, well, on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Psyops, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Psyops, for the support. He says, is it illegal to change Zelenskyy to the office of president? I heard he didn't want to run again.
It might be illegal to do that. I think that's called slavery. So I don't think that's legal entirely.
Although he doesn't need to run again because he's suspended the election.
We're going to suspend the elections and keep it going until the war is over. And so no, he won't have to be chained. He'll actually be there until the war is over, from what we understand, and then they'll hold an election. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and I thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one. But thank you so much once again for the support, Sibes, and also throwing in a really good question.
Indeed. And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Still Thinking, who says, longtime viewer and keep up the great work, and good luck in law school to the both of you in LSE.
And thank you so much for the support, Still Thinking. Bless you. Oh, man, bless you.
Excuse me.
But thank you so much once again for the support, Still Thinking, and enjoying this channel a great deal. And also, thank you for being an old guard. That's one thing I know, is that you haven't really thrown in a lot of super chats, Still Thinking. I've seen you in the live chat, though, a good bit. And you've been around for a long time, certainly deserving of the old guard status. And I got to thank you so much once again for being an old guard on this channel and helping us to keep this thing running and always being here with us each and every night as we cover the news of this war. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for sticking the course.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Jay Bagwell. And it's good to see you again, Jay. And he says, speaking of Holosun sights, those are actually standard issue on the new Estonian R20 rifle for their military. And let me know if you want to shoot one. Wink.
Hey, there's an offer I will take up now. Now I buy that for $1. But still, thank you so much for the support, Jay. and Holosuns aren't that bad. Matthew's actually ratted on Holosuns a bit, because they're not as durable as EOTechs, from what I understand. But at the same time, I don't really know though, Matthew, who's like turning their rifle upside down and just slamming their, reflex into the ground, or their holographic sight into the ground.
Holosuns are just, I think, like $100 less or somewhere around that area than a EOTech. To me, I would spend the $100 extra to get one that's going to last. And if you accidentally bang it on something, you're not going to bust it up. But the way yours is set up, you could easily bust the glass on that thing easy.
Oh, come on. I think you're exaggerating right there. That thing's in a pretty nice little spot. In case y'all are wondering, the Holosun I have is mounted onto a Springfield Hellion rifle on the top rail. And I actually haven't really done much shooting with that Hellion. It's just kind of there. But it still looks like it's fairly durable. And I don't really think anyone's going to be flinging their rifle into the ground like that. I mean, look at all the combat footage we've seen in Ukraine, Matthew. And look at how many Holosuns there have been. They must be a reliable holographic sight for nearly every single video we see for them to be using Holosuns.
True. I just personally like the EOTech better, just because of the warranty and everything it comes with. I know EOTech or Holosun probably comes with a warranty as well, but yeah, now Jay Bagwell said he uses Aimpoint. Now I would use Aimpoint too, but those are a little bit too far out of my price range. EOTech's already at the top end of my price range, to say the least. I only have one of those because I couldn't get two. But the Aimpoint, those are just Gucci'd out. I mean, I think it's the T1 or something like that. It's like a red dot, really simplistic red dot, but the thing is super expensive.
Oh.
Or maybe it's S2 or something. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's not that bad. That's not that bad. You know, that's not bad at all, actually. But you know something, Matthew, interesting I saw the other day? I'll tell y'all this. Y'all think this is pretty cool. I saw a Cobra. Let me see. It's a holographic sight, I believe. Holographic sight. It was this one, right? Let me make sure I'm looking at the right ones. Yeah, I think I am. I think it was this one right here that you see on this AK-74. And it was an original one that was from Russia. And so, you know, and the United States, those are actually kind of rare. And y'all wouldn't believe what I saw it on. I saw it on an AK-12. It was a real Cobra sight on an AK-12. It was really neat, really cool. But I don't know how quality these things are. They are coming from the Russian Federation after all, so, you know, it is what it is. But it was still neat to see because they're rare here in America. Anyways, I would say Holosuns aren't that bad. And thank you for the offer, Jay, because we might take you up on that offer at some point. The collection has grown a little, and I would be interested in trying out some of them and also eventually making gun review videos on some of them, because some of them are really neat. I'm not going to spoil the surprise or anything for when we eventually do make videos on them. And, you know, not to hype everyone up a little too much, but I know some folks who are able to get their hands on some very rare guns. And I'm not going to say who they are or anything right now because, you know, this is all just kind of like, you know, idle talk, conversational stuff. But they have an ability to get my hands on some of the rarest guns that you could find here in America, like a full automatic AK-12. And they have given the offer that they would possibly allow us to loan the AK-12 to do a review on. And in case of y'all don't know, there are very few AK-12s in the United States. I believe there's only a few thousand of them, and out of all of those, I believe there's only less than a dozen of them that are automatic. So the chances of getting your hands on one of those is probably one of the rarest things that you could do in the gun world, at least in terms of modern firearms. So it would be possible that we could do something like that. But we have to, you know, of course, do a little bit more work on that, try and get into that realm of doing gun reviews, and then we'll probably go and approach them about seeing about getting some neat guns. Those aren't the only ones on the table, by the way. There are, and Matthew, I know I haven't really told you about these, but there are some other options as well. MG34s, MG42s, Maxim machine guns, Dishkas. There are a decent amount of them, but those are, those are kind of a little bit out there. But we could eventually make videos on all of those. So, you know, that's pretty neat. And Angry Penguin just said, it's crazy you saw one in the wild. I know, right? And this is what's even crazier. The one I saw was serial number 1. It was 000001. It was the first AK-12 made in production series in the world. And it's here in America. I'm not going to say where, but I saw it. And it was sick. So, and it's an AK-12. It's just a modified AK-74 for the most part. But it was still sick. And so, anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much for the support, Jay, once again. And also the really neat recommendation. Because maybe we'll start moving on into the gun review category seriously this time, instead of like last time where it was a flop because the Tommy gun didn't really work at all. And so with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you so much once again.
All right, and up next we have a $10 super chat from Chase Maddie, and thank you very much, Chase, for that support. They said, you'll be successful even with less streams, and the short videos are great, and live chat, please, and thank you very much.
And thank you so much for the kind words, Chase Maddie. And I think we'll probably end up being successful even with less streams. One thing I know is that the Lee Spring Army is a very dedicated army. And we have been, when Matthew was sick, we were able to take days off and come back, and our live audience hadn't shrunk at all. It seemed as, in fact, that it actually grew while we were gone. And so I got to thank you so much for saying that, because I hope that everyone in the Lee Spring Army is of the same mindset, that even if it is just going to turn into weekends alone, where it's just Saturday and Sunday here in a few weeks, hopefully all of y'all will still join us for those amazing Saturdays and Sundays where we fundraise to help save the lives of folks in Ukraine and then just run a normal night on Saturday. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And thank you for complimenting the short videos. Matthew put out a great one today. It's gotten 112,000 views. And weirdly enough...
113 now.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And they've been doing really well. Actually, they do far better viewership-wise than the streams do, period. Our best streams get up to probably around the 70,000, 80,000 range. Almost all of our summary videos get up into the hundreds of thousands of views, like 100,000 views or 140,000. That's like the mid range. The low range is like in between 70,000 and 100,000, and then the high range, I'll just name a number, it has gone all the way up to nearly 400,000, being one of our best war summaries ever. And it appears that a lot more people like them, and that also makes more sense because YouTube is a video platform after all. It's not a stream platform, so it would make more sense that the videos get more reach, but it appears that it just gets way more reach, nearly 200% at the minimum, which is absolutely insane and also really cool to know. But still, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well, and we will make sure to grab that live chat. And thank you, Chase Matty, for being here for such a long time and supporting this channel so that way we can keep this thing rolling. And with that, what do we got for the live chat?
And the live chat question is going to go to Rodnov Claw, who says, I hyperbole question. What are the chances that Zelenskyy will hold on to power after the war? Most military leaders end up holding on to some form of autocracy after the conflict is done.
That's a good question. We don't really know the answer to that question right now, actually. We don't know what Zelenskyy will do once the war is over. We know that he said he was only going to be a one-term president before the war, and I have a feeling he's probably going to stick to that claim. We may see him at the end of the war host an election, and then he steps down and just does not run for re-election. That may be the case.
Or it could be one really long term. You never know.
Yeah, it could be one really long life term. Who knows? But anyways, I hope that does address that the best we can, because who really knows until the war ends. I have a feeling, though, that Zelenskyy probably will run an election and just not run himself, and that will be it. He will have done his one term, and he'll be done with. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And also, to address something really quickly I saw in the live chat, this is a great question to have answered. Someone said, but aren't all automatic firearms illegal under U.S. federal law? To my knowledge, an ordinary citizen cannot obtain a permit to even possess such military-grade weaponry, much less carry it or fire it. There you would be mistaken. You can actually own automatic firearms in the United States. If you're a licensed FFL, you can really own any automatic firearm you want. And if I'm correct, Matthew, it is just being a licensed FFL, if I'm correct.
To have full auto guns?
Yes.
I believe you have to be a Class 3 dealer, which is a little bit more comprehensive than a simple FFL. Pretty much anybody can get the standard FFL, which there's different classes of that as well. But you have to have an NFA specialized license to have the full auto guns. And I think there's a lot less dealers that actually have that license versus the normal one.
And if you were a private citizen that wanted to own an automatic weapon, there's this thing in the United States called a tax stamp. It is a $250 certificate that you submit to the ATF, which is the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Bureau, for review. That review usually takes up somewhere around 8 to 12 months for it to go through. Most of that is just being transferred from desk to desk while people, look you over, and then it gets stamped and approved. And after that 8 to 12 month waiting period, you can then go and buy the automatic firearm you want. However, there's a bit of a catch to that. You can't just buy any of them. You can't just go, yes, I would love a FAMAS, please, brand new from France. You can't do that. It has to be a automatic firearm that was manufactured before the year 1986, which artificially inflates the value of the guns due to the limited availability of them. If it's before that time period, you can get any gun you want if it was made before 1986. I've seen people in the reenacting world that have had 1919s in original firing condition, Browning 50 calibers, the M2s. I've seen Tommy guns, Sten guns, any gun that you could imagine that was made before 1986, you can buy with a tax stamp. They are incredibly expensive, though. Way more expensive than they really are worth. A Sten gun nowadays is around the range of $10,000 US. The original manufacturing cost for that gun was somewhere around $30 US in modern terms. So it is way overinflated in value in price, but you can still get them legally. Also, another interesting thing about it is that you can actually travel without the person who owns the the automatic firearm if it's a part of a trust, which is something I just actually found out a few days ago. If you create a trust for your gun collection and you sign people onto that trust, they can actually take the automatic firearm without you there being the original purchaser of the firearm, and they can take it to a gun range across the state, hundreds of miles away, and shoot it and review it on video and everything there without the actual person who legally owns the firearm. So that was something new that I learned yesterday as well, and that is completely legal. So, to correct that misassumption there, you can own a automatic weapon in the United States. It's just that it takes a lot of paperwork and time, and also a lot of money as well. And so with that,
Something else that you probably didn't know is with NFA items, which includes the automatics, I do believe, and also suppressors and things like that. You actually have to get written permission from at the ATF before you can go across state lines with a suppressor. Anytime you leave a state with it.
Yeah, I did know that. That's why I said, if you're in a trust, you can travel anywhere across state. I didn't say across the country or anything, because traveling across state borders with firearms, really even normal firearms, can end up posing some troubles. If the other state has different laws, you could get in a good bit of trouble if you're found out. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. It'll also clear up a little bit of a misassumption there. But that's also why you don't see a lot of people, always, because that's something that a lot of people don't know about. A lot of people don't know about the laws surrounding firearms. And that's one thing that leads to a lot of confusion, to be honest, is what people think is legal and what isn't legal in the firearm world. And also then the ATF, to be quite honest with you all, adds a lot of confusion, because some years some things are legal, and then other years these things that were legal and you could just go buy at a gun store one year are now completely illegal, and they're now federal crimes, and you can go to prison for these things, which then adds a whole bunch of difficulty because they don't even notify people that the laws are changing. They just change them, and so you could unknowingly be committing a felony if you show up with a certain kind of gun with a certain kind of thing on it at a range, and then an ATF officer is there, then that's a whole thing of its own. But anyways,
and then you can end up in the federal pen.
Yeah, and then you could end up in federal jail, which is a little bit more cushier than state prison.
Sometimes, depending on what state you're talking about.
Yeah, Alabama, I think it's largely the same. State and federal prison are kind of the same thing. But in some states, though, federal prison is actually really cushy compared to state prison. At least that's what they say. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $10 super chat from Slava Ukrainian Max, who says, Enforcer, how early in advance did Zelenskyy know that the invasion was happening from U.S. intel?
I would have to be quite honest with you. From his public statements, it seemed as though the war was as much of a surprise to the Ukrainian army and the Ukrainian government as it was to really everyone else in the world. I think U.S. intelligence at the time was probably giving him the same answer that I was giving before the war began, that it most likely would not happen, and it was all some kind of diplomatic posturing by the Russians to escalate the situation into a negotiation. That's probably what he was hearing, because up until the day of, the Ukrainian army was completely caught off guard, which shows that they were not prepared, at least from what we understand based off of comments from Ukrainian military officials. And also, Zelenskyy was saying up until the day that the war began, this isn't really going to be happening. It's all just posturing by them. We don't really need to worry too much. And then the war just kicked off on the 23rd. So I think that nobody really expected that the war would happen, and then it just did. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and thank you so much for the support, Slava Ukraini Max, and of course being an old guard of this channel. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, big shout out to Maria DeKelver, who puts in an 8, as well as Rob Kugsor, who puts in a 7. And thank you, Maria and Rob, for that support very much and helping to keep the channel running. And sadly, there are no comments to address on either one of those super chats. So with that, we're moving on to our next one, which goes to Burnaby Alex, who puts in a 5. And he puts in a very interesting joke, and I think it might be a dirty joke. So I'm going to skip saying that one, but clever wordage there. And thank you very much for the support. And up next, we have a $5 donation from Gilly Flower, who says, may the Shoigu line fall like all the others. And I imagine those dragon's teeth being more a nuisance instead of an effective defense.
Oh, they're going to be more of a nuisance than a defense. We already saw on the Belgrade border that they were just a nuisance. The Russian Liberation Army moved clear through them without any trouble with the armor involved. And so, thank you so much for support. And hopefully we'll see that I called it the Shoigu line earlier, but it is the Surovikin line. hopefully the Surovikin line will collapse very easily, a lot easier than we're expecting. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And Ryder's Eye just said, America has over 360 million firearms. I only own 32. Dang, that's a lot. I mean, that's a load right there. 32 guns? Man, I'm trying to think. Yeah,
Damn.
Yeah, damn, son. But that's a lot of them. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $5 super chat from CK Bold, who says, take a live chat question. And we sure will, and thank you very much for that support. And the live chat question is going to go to Dark Wraith, who says, have you guys heard about that Rapid Dragon?
We have. We actually covered that a long time ago, and that is a really cool system. Probably one that gives the United States a massive strategic advantage over really any other country in a conventional war at the moment. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support and also sponsoring that live chat, and I hope we addressed that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you so much once again for the support.
All right, and our next one goes to Russ Rizzo, who puts in a 5 and says, did you see winning Ukraine top fencer Olha Korlin was disqualified in the World Cup Championship for refusing to shake hands with the Ruski loser?
I did see that.
Yes, I did.
I did see that she refused to shake hands. I didn't know she got disqualified for that. That's interesting.
She got reinstated afterward.
Oh, so it was kind of like a little token disqualified, now you're back kind of thing?
Somewhat. You know, I've kind of got mixed feelings about that. If you really don't want to shake their hands and, you know, do that whole thing, should you really compete with them in the first place? Because if you're entering the competition, but then you won't be a good sportsman and then shake their hand, it seems like you shouldn't enter the competition to begin with.
Well, yeah, but I guess, you know, they're kind of like, you know, the Ukrainian fence are maybe viewing it as, you know, like being a Jewish person versus a Nazi, you know, like, do you think that a Jewish person after World War II would shake a Nazi person's hand if they were competing against them in the Olympics?
Did they?
I don't think they did. Hell, I think the Mossad went around and killed most of the Nazis after the war. So honestly, I would say it's understandable, especially considering the war going on. And she may have not been able to choose to pair up with this person, so she just beat them and then didn't shake their hand. I can get it. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $5 super chat from Ignis, Lord of Flames, who says, it's a game of tag, but the catch is you tag them by throwing a rock at them. Classic Russian orc game.
That's like that Father Frost crap. A Merry Christmas, everybody. I freeze to death at the bottom of a spruce tree in the middle of the forest. But anyways, thank you for the support. Yeah, that must be what Taganrog is. It's tag and rock. So you tag someone, they get the rock, and then if they throw it at you and they bust your head open, they win. And so with that, thank you so much for the support. That's a pretty good way to look at it. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Timothy Kenny. And thank you very much, Timothy, for that support. And I don't see a comment to address, sadly. But Enforcer, what say you?
Thank you so much for the support, Timothy. And also, thank you for helping this channel to keep on running. You didn't throw in a comment, but the support does help us to keep this thing going. And if it wasn't for folks like y'all who supported this channel and helped this thing to keep on rolling, it wouldn't have been possible for us to do this day in, day out, night after night, week after week, and continue to cover this news with all of y'all. And thank you so much once again, Timothy, for helping us to make this possible. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to The Legacy, who puts in a 5 and says, we know some Russians are drafted against their will and others resist Putin. War is shades of gray, and can you lessen the mocking of Russian dead? Slav Ukraine, LSA.
And thank you for the support, but no. I don't mean to say this as pointed as I am, but I've been saying this for 520 days. I run this show the way I run this show. And I've seen enough to know that regardless whether they want to be there or not, the guys who don't want to be there can end up committing the same crimes against humanity that the guys who want to be there do. I don't really have a lot of mercy for Russians. If they didn't really want to be there, they could have resisted and they could have gone to prison. There's a whole bunch of things that they could have done, and yet they still ended up there. So, you know, that's my input on it. And also, I've got to be quite honest, at this point in time, 520 days in, I don't really take a lot of critiquing on how I do my show. There are a million people, and I used to at the beginning of the war, and I don't mean to say this rudely at all to you. But at the beginning of the war, I used to say I welcome criticism, but then people criticize you on anything. If I took it seriously, people would be going, "Oh, why aren't you sitting there and laughing at the Russians that are getting bested here?" Or if I, cut down the show to be 2 hours long, people go, "Oh, you're trying to do a rush job." I saw that tonight. And then if I make the show 3.5 hours long, "Oh, why are you making it so long? You just love hearing yourself talk." There are people who complain about everything. I just run the show the way it runs. People can like it or they don't. And I am who I am. I don't apologize for who I am or what I do. It's what I do. And so that's how I do it. But with that, hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $7 super chat from Margaret Hemsley, who says, "Can you see each other in normal streams?"
No, no, we can't. We are in totally separate rooms when we run streams in this format. We can't see each other at all. And so with that, thank you so much for the support, Margaret. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one is a $5 super chat from Timothy Kenny once again, and no comment on this one either, but thank you once again, Timothy, for the second support of the night, and we do appreciate it very much. We also have a $5 super chat from Joe Little, who says, "Off topic, but can't AI already pass the bar exam? I don't need a lawyer. I'm just going to download an app." And I have to say this, Joe. Depending on what you're needing a lawyer for, it's probably going to be jacked up bigger than hell because the AI is not going to get certain things right. In fact, I've tried to use the AI to answer some questions, some actual legit legal questions, and it got the general information correct, but it missed a few nuances that would have caused you to either lose an issue or lose a case, or mess up the entire thing completely. So it's definitely not ready yet, and I really doubt that AI will ever replace lawyers because lawyers have to appeal to people, and the AI simply really can't do that yet. So an AI is not going to be able to appeal to a jury and convince them properly. At least right now it's not. Maybe 20 or 30 years down the road it might, but that's simply not the case, and it's also a little bit, a little bit exaggerated in my opinion. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say it's probably not a smart idea to use an AI for that. I would suggest getting an attorney. That would probably be a lot better, especially for any situation, because all of Matthew's points are correct, and also people are kind of overplaying the ability of AI a little bit too much right now. People are going, "Oh, it's scary," and then you ask it something like, "What happened in World War II?" And then it just regurgitates something it finds online. Like if you sit there, because a lot of people act like this thing's really smart. All it is really a search engine at this point that can kind of make things sound like it's original. That's all I'm seeing from it. It hasn't so far come up with anything original yet. And I think that's when AI will truly be something impressive. And that'll take a few more years for it to come up with an original thought or an original idea. Because at this point, I've never really seen it come up with one. It just takes information from the internet, and sometimes it cobbles it together and knits it together into an answer, which looks new and original, but it's just stuff it's hearing from the internet. It's not coming up with anything new, and it's not really able to critically think yet. So I would certainly not have that thing as your legal representation, because it is only one step below a normal attorney. It has no critical thinking. Most attorneys have some level of critical thinking, although that's sometimes questionable. And so with that, I'm just kidding.
Also, if you get the AI as your lawyer, if you have to show up to court, the AI can't show up for you. You'll still have to show up yourself and basically represent yourself. And at that point, you have to be able to explain what the AI wrote. And if you're not an attorney, you're going to have a very hard time doing that. And you're probably going to get screwed over anyway. So if you can't articulate what the thing's telling you, then you're also up a creek without a paddle.
And also, you can't have a phone out in court. You would probably be held in contempt of court for that. So if you ever wanted to come up with an argument on the spot, you couldn't type it into the system because you would probably be held in contempt of court for pulling out your phone and trying to do something like that. So I have a feeling that if just went, get an attorney. That's the best thing I could say. Get an attorney. And so with that, thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Walter Ilakota Jr., who puts in a 5 and says, "Me again. One reason for the Ukraine Central Bank announcement is the insurance from third party for the grain ships."
And thank you for clarifying that, because that adds a little bit of extra info as to why they're doing such a thing. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Timothy Kenny, who puts in a 5 and does not leave a comment once again. And Timothy, I hope you're not trying to leave a comment and it's not coming through, because I have a feeling you might be after this third one. But thank you very much once again for the support, and we do appreciate it very much. And to answer Neil's question, have you ever been to court, LMAO? Yes, I have, countless
both
times. Yes, I've actually interned properly, and I've been to court multiple times, and I've actually assisted with multiple different cases. So I have been. I know what that question was trying to be. I was trying to be a gotcha, but that didn't quite work.
But
anyways.
that's like, wait a minute, Matthew, that's like the cops when they sit there and say, have you studied the law? It's like, well, have you? It's like, you haven't. What the hell are you asking me that question for? And also, yes, we have been to court, and I got to be honest with you, that's where I learned that, and I don't mean this harshly to any of the attorneys that are watching, but that's where I learned that some attorneys don't need to be attorneys because they can't even dress properly. Like, I saw some guy in there one day when I was, just sitting there and observing things. Saw one attorney come in who hadn't even done his hair, like hadn't even combed it. It was just like completely uncombed. It was like a netty mess. And then he was wearing like Simpsons socks. And I get wearing Simpsons socks if you're like at a fun office party or something like that. But I think this guy was representing someone on a felony charge that day. And I was like, I feel like Simpsons socks really aren't the appropriate thing to wear during a felony trial. Like, that just seems like something you shouldn't be doing. Yet nonetheless, the guy was doing it. I don't know, Matthew, if you were there with me on that day. I think we both went on the same day. Yeah. And I was like, this is just ridiculous. And also on top of that, I mean, I got to tell y'all, like, dressing smart is a big deal. It's actually a really big deal, especially when you get into the professional world. I think you should always be dressed smartly because it represents you in a good way. And I seldom saw a well-dressed and smartly turned-out attorney in that entire courtroom when both of us were there. Like, almost all of them were wearing rags. I was like, you gotta make it look like you'll at least dress the part. These people look like they're coming in wearing like $20 Party City Halloween costumes as attorneys. I was like, yeah, that was a tough one. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Chase Maddie, who puts in a 5 and says, just St. Javelin and Dr. Heimar stopping by to bless you in the LSA. And live chat question, please.
And thank you so much for the support, Chase Maddie, and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you for having St. Javelin and the Heimars bless this channel. And thank you so much once again. And we will make sure to take the live chat. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
And the live chat question goes to Jim, who says, do you guys also show when Ukraine has large equipment losses to show how hard it truly is advancing?
No, we don't really show a lot of equipment losses on this channel because there's a decent amount of Ukrainians who watch, and I don't want them to potentially see their own people being hurt or potentially killed. So we don't really show that much on this channel, but they have taken some losses. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to the Legacy, who puts in another $2 donation, and thank you very much for that support as well. They said, I respect that POV enforcer Matt in LSA. Excuse me.
And thank you for the support, and thank you for respecting that point of view, because it is what we do. And I've honestly, at this point, gotten insulated from really a lot of critiques or criticism, because some of it's like stuff we can't even control. Like, I saw some people say tonight, you need to fix your internet. It's like, well, thank you. I would love to fix the weather. The fact that I think it costs like $15,000 to get cable connected to this house for the internet, and a whole bunch
not
of
quite that expensive, but it's a little expensive.
It's fairly, it's
a little overestimated.
A little overestimated, but it's not that much of an exaggeration compared to what it still is. But it's like we can't really fix things like that, and then also people want us to fix like who we are. Like, could you be more boring? Like that's like the biggest critique of this channel is, hey, could you not like try and like bust jokes or laugh or anything? And it's like, like, here's how I look at it at this point. This is the biggest stream in this category on YouTube, period. Usually whenever we're running, we're in the top 40 in the world on live streams running on YouTube at all. And it's like, if we were doing something that was really bad and needed to be changed, where we need to grow, why would we be in the top 40 of live streams every single time we run? We wouldn't be. We would be down at the bottom. We would have like a few hundred people watching or something like that. And so whenever I hear like critiques like that, it's like, if it really needed fixing, we wouldn't be in the top 40. Not to be complacent and, sound like we're like arrogant or anything, but, the charts speak for themselves. And if we needed to improve on anything, I'm sure that we would see that in the charts. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and with that being said, we are fresh out of Super Chat questions, so we're moving on to our live chat questions. And for the last 2 nights, we have lost our Morse code decoders of the stream. I don't know where they've gone. We've lost all of them. I'm not sure if they're still watching or what, or they ran off because they heard we were cutting back the streams, but we don't have the Morse code of the night. So we're moving on to our first live chat question, which goes to Mamba Mentality, who says, there is rumor that Prigozhin has been liberated from this world, and is it true?
Prigozhin liberated from the world?
Yes.
No, he's still alive right now. And so with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to W13RD guy, who says, do you think that Odessa would be worthwhile use for the Patriot system?
Yes, I think it would be, because it appears to be the weak part of the Ukrainian air defenses right now, so I think a Patriot would certainly be needed in that area. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And also, I see some people going, wow, dang, and also, really quickly to, add this in, because this is I haven't ever said this on stream, but I thought this was a huge thing when I saw it, and Matthew can back it up because he actually saw it as well. There is a website out there that apparently gathers up data and analytics on YouTube channels that live stream, and in the night, funnily enough, that I forgot what it was, but we got like 20,000 something live viewers on one night. It was 21,000 of them. And the charts updated the next day, and we beat Fox, CBS, ABC, Elon Musk, who apparently live streamed that day. I didn't even know, but apparently he was live streaming.
Elon Musk?
Yeah, Elon Musk. He was actually live streaming, and he popped up on the chart, and I think he was 3 spots below us. And one thing that I thought was amazing, because considering that we were an apolitical channel, and we never talk about politics, one thing that really surprised me is that our viewership on that live stream ended up beating out both sides of the political spectrum almost entirely. We ended up beating out Ben Shapiro for live stream viewership, who was live that day. We also ended up beating out the Young Turks, which is on the other side of the political spectrum. We ended up beating everybody, and even on normal days, like today, we still end up beating most people, and we end up somewhere in the top 50 or the top 40 live streams on YouTube. Our mom is really blown away by that and wants us to brag about that a great deal. She's like, why don't you put that up in the YouTube banner? And I was like, nah, no one really care much. But that's one thing, whenever we hear criticism where people are like, wow, this sucks. It's like, well, why would we be in the top 40? If we sucked, we wouldn't be in the top 40, or top 50 whenever we run. So, that's why we've largely stopped taking criticism and critiques, unless they're good, because I actually heard a really good one that we started to do is when someone said, hey, you get a lot of viewer drop off whenever you do your transitions. Why not smoothing out the transitions? That was actually a really good critique. Like, that was a great one. Like, one of the best I've heard running this channel. And so we actually started implementing that after that critique. But most of them, like, fix the internet or stop joking or something. It's like, that's how we run the show, and that's why people like the show. If you don't like it, there's other ones out there. There's 50 people who run live streams that I can think of on Ukraine alone. It's like, there's a lot of people who don't joke. There's something for everyone out there. You don't have to be here. You could be somewhere else and you could be happier there. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and we have another super chat, which goes to Margaret Hemsley, who puts in a $5 donation. And thank you once again, Margaret, for that support. She says, super sticker sent. And I did see it. It was that fellow sitting there talking about incredible. And she said, please tell everyone to buy the Enforcer Thermo Cup because it's awesome. And I have to agree with you on that 100%. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I have to agree 100% as well. And, we don't really plug the merch store at all, really. The link is in the description below, however. But considering that you just brought up the merch store, why don't y'all take a look at it? The link is in the description below. All you have to do is click on it, and it will take you directly to the Enforcer merch store as it loads. And you can see all the cool stuff we have here. We have LSA hoodies and t-shirts. We have the Enforcer logo merch, and we also have the thermal mugs, the steel mugs. They're really neat. They're actually one of the items that sells the least, however. That's the weird thing about it. I don't know what's up with it, but some of the highest selling items, if I remember correctly, Matthew, are the mugs and the t-shirts, I believe.
Guess which is the best selling thing on this list right here that you're looking at.
I think if I remember correctly, it is the LSA... No, it's not the LSA. It's the Enforcer t-shirts, if I'm correct.
Nope, and I'm sure nobody's going to guess this properly. Believe it or not, that Russian bots mug is the best-selling thing that we have on the store by a long shot.
Really?
Yes, that is the best-selling thing that we have.
I didn't even know. That's actually really cool. I have to go and look at the stats on that and try and figure that out. But if y'all ever want to support,
Hey, it's sitting on my desk right now. It's that good selling. I even bought one.
I just have the original Enforcer logo mug down here. That's mine. But still, if y'all wanted to support the channel and get something cool out of it, you can always go over to theenforcerstore.com. The link is, of course, in the description below. And you can get any one of these things. You can even get the little thermal mugs down here with our logo on them. It's cool. It's neat. It has our logo on it. And it also represents the channel. So you get something really cool out of it. And you also give us free advertising, which is really the selling point for us on this, is that whenever y'all wear this in public, people get to see it, and people are like, what the hell is that? And maybe they'll ask y'all, or maybe y'all tell them. Maybe y'all be like vegans, and y'all will tell everyone in the world that you were an Enforcer follower. I don't know. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and thank you for bringing that up. And make sure to get yourself a little thermos. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and moving back to our live chat questions, we have one from Austin H, who says, aren't those cement things that look like Kloptrop? Pretty sure they aren't normal dragon teeth, question mark.
I think those things are normal dragon teeth. They're pyramid shaped, and they're also put into the ground, I think, about 6 inches to a foot deep. So they're just normal dragon's teeth from what I understand. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to some random jet, who says, why hasn't Ukrainian command sent units through the dried out reservoir?
I don't really know. I'd have to be honest with you, I have no idea. Maybe because there's no developed roads in that area, so they're scared that anywhere they try and drive across, it'll turn into a mud sludge if it's disturbed enough. That may be it. But beyond that, I would actually have to declare ignorance on that. I don't really know. And also, by the way, about the critique thing, this is also one thing that we get a critique on, which is just goofy, is that people, whenever I declare ignorance, they go, oh, he doesn't know, he could just Google it or something, or if I actually try and give an answer and I really don't know the answer and I give it and it wasn't really a good one, oh, why can't he just declare ignorance? It's stuff like that where we're like, you know what, whatever, we're just doing it the way we do it. Just to once again reiterate and hammer home the idea of, most criticisms we can't even really accept because what in the world are we supposed to do? But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Derek B, who says, I think this is why HIMARS rockets increasingly less effective. U.S. and Ukraine face fast improving Russian countermeasures.
I haven't really seen any Russian countermeasures to the HIMARS, and they really don't have the ability to make one. So I don't know what you saw to make you say that this is why you're saying, because I haven't seen anything that made the HIMARS less effective over the war. As a matter of fact, I've seen them start to use the HIMARS to strike frontline positions, and they're able to hit those with pinpoint accuracy. So with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to John O, who says, did you see the announcement from Ukraine to terror Russians in Crimea to leave while they can, because soon Crimea will be Ukrainian again, and I wonder what they have planned. And I'm not sure what they have planned, but one thing I do know is they've closed the Crimean bridge yet again because of a missile scare. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say I don't know what they have planned. I did see it though, and it was kind of run-of-the-mill, kind of like all the other ones that they've made throughout the war. But I don't know what they have planned, to be quite honest with you. I'd have to declare ignorance on that. And so with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Plexus Gaming, who says, what Ukraine needs to do to end this war faster is to follow the combat strategy that the U.S. used during the first Gulf War, spearhead with armor, and then mechanized infantry in a blitzkrieg attack.
And I would have to say that's a pretty interesting idea. That may work, but at the same time, it didn't really work for the Russians because their entire doctrine revolves around armored waves. And it appears that the armor wave failed pretty badly at the beginning of the war. It may work, though. I don't know. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Gabriel Mum, who says, one channel in one video stated that the biggest game-changer weapon for Ukraine would not be a new weapon like F-16, but lots and lots of 155mm artillery shells, and do you agree?
I have to say this really quickly. I have to disclaim this because there are some YouTube, I don't know what YouTube channel said that, and there are YouTube channels out there with egos, kind of like us, but whenever anyone disagrees with them, they get very offended and they go mental and everything. So just want to say, don't know who the YouTuber is, you know, and I have no idea. But to answer that, in my opinion, I don't think that a massive amount of 155mm shells is really going to be the game changer. Because if you get so many shells you can't even use them, what is it really changing? It's just making things more explodable. You know, you can hit things and it blows up a lot greater than it would have, possibly causing more damage. But I think as long as we're providing the Ukrainians the same amount of shells that they're consuming, I think that's really fine. We don't really need to provide a surplus where you need to just build up supplies, unless if they lay out that there is some offensive planning in the future where they need that, then provide a little extra for them to get a surplus. Game changing would be to provide weapons in different fields and to actually make the Ukrainian army well-rounded instead of like what we see with the Russians, where it is a very lopsided force, where they have a lot in the artillery and a lot in the armor, but they don't have anything in any other category. And everything else is just terrible, or there is none of it. So I would say that it would be better to, well, balance the Ukrainian army than to just give them a lopsided amount of one thing. Because it's not just one weapon. There's no such thing as a Wunderwaffe, like the Germans thought in the Second World War, where one special weapon will win the war. It takes everything being marginally improved to actually get an upper hand advantage on the enemy. And I think that's what we need to be focusing on as a doctrine in terms of support for Ukraine. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we have a super chat here to address, and after we address that, we'll be getting on to the final question of the night.
And the super chat is actually going to be the last one of the night because I'm out of live chat questions. So, Enforcer, would you like to do the thing?
All right. And so, who is the lucky last person to put in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Jose Diaz, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Jose, for the support. He says, greetings from Corpus Christi, Texas. Enforcer and Enforcer Matt and all my dear LSA brothers and sisters. Sorry I haven't been sharing with you all the last 2 weeks. See you all when I return to Puerto Rico next Wednesday.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, Jose. And also, all the way in Corpus Christi in Texas. That's right over here. Hey, isn't that where the battleship Texas is at?
Maybe. I know that's where that hurricane came in and, you know, messed it up.
Man. Well, nonetheless, I thank you so much for the support, Jose. And also, I hope you have a fun time. Well, I hope you had a fun time in Corpus Christi. I hope you have a fun time getting back to Puerto Rico. And also, thank you for joining us tonight. I hope you've been having a fun time with family, and I hope you get to have a fun time with the LSA here in the next week or two. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, and thank you for being an old guard of this channel, Jose. And with that, we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I thank every single one of y'all so much once again for watching. There are 3,800 of y'all online right now watching this stream, and I'm very honored to know that so many of y'all have enjoyed this stream so much. If y'all have enjoyed it and y'all are new to this channel, make sure to subscribe. We run this stream 6 days, well, for now, 6 days a week, every single day at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, except for Monday, covering the past 24 hours of the war in Ukraine in picture and video evidence. And we also run, when there's enough news, and some days the news is very slow during the middle of the day, we run daily war summaries, which go in 10 to 15 minute stints about some of the top news of the day in the war, and also explain what they are and what they mean. But with that, thank you all so much once again for watching. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, I just butchered that, and long live the Least Spring Army. The Least Spring Army never dies.
And good night, LSA. Thank you all for another great stream, and see you tomorrow. Slava Ukraine.
Yes. The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.